People who live in paradise don't need to think about those in hell, a phrase said by Josie the dwarf. A young man in the dark keeps repeating to himself that he has to go all the way. As he says this, the boy scratches himself, because the person who lives in hell thinks about paradise at every moment. The message he keeps staring at is telling him to go to the end of the alternate world. The boy looks very confused. He doesn't know why he needs to do this, until the moment when exhaustion defeats him. Again, the protagonist has the same dream as when he was sleeping in the backseat of a car. Then a strong light comes toward him. Without knowing how, the protagonist ended up alone in this cave for years. The only thing he had was a book about celestial martial arts. Later, a message appeared saying that if the boy wants to go home, he has to go all the way, and then he will be able to see his family again. One day, he receives the message that the tutorial has finally been completed, and our hero awakens at that moment. The boy is in tears because he finally made it. But when he crosses the portal, that place was not his world. In fact, this was just the beginning of everything. The boy falls into despair. He doesn't understand why this is happening. It's been 10 years since he's been trying to get back home. At that moment, someone calls for the protagonist. Someone says they heard the boy's voice and came to see what it was. And moreover, this man says that he wanted to let the boy go, but his family is starving. That's why he wants the boy's flesh. You can see the fear in his eyes. A sword falls to the ground. Our hero is alive and blaming the man for what happened. His mind is flooded with phrases of guilt. At that moment, a message appears saying that the level of martial arts has increased. Even with this tragedy, the protagonist reached a new level. The protagonist gradually begins to find this situation amusing. He's even laughing uncontrollably. At the same moment he saw that message, the protagonist understood what he had to do with that martial arts book, which was to level up. To return to his world, he has to reach the maximum level. Now, in the present day, a boy runs to his demonic sect leader. The protagonist is asking a defeated man which generation of sect leader he is. With a sword to his throat, he says he is a Sword Emperor 8th generation. Apparently, our hero has already defeated the 6th and 7th generations of the sect. The protagonist thinks it's cool that they always come back from time to challenge him again. And with a strike, the hero finishes the opponent. One of the followers attacks to try to avenge his leader, but the protagonist thinks that someone who claims to be from a demonic sect shouldn't say something like that. Without even realizing it, the boy's face is grabbed. The hero admits that the boy is quite brave. For some reason, the boy's body doesn't move. Then, a barrier of energy is created. The protagonist's power is monstrous. After this demonstration, the hero tells the boy to come challenge him again when he is stronger. All he wants is for their next encounter to be fun. Now he is the next leader of the sect. Unfortunately, this time the master he fought was nothing special. The protagonist doesn't know what to do to have fun. Things are so boring that he's thinking about creating a group of martial arts masters. Our hero opens his eyes and looks at the sky. It's been 140 years that he's been living this reality. All he wanted in the beginning was to go back home, but now he doesn't even remember his family's faces anymore. To him, paradise never existed, since this hellish life has been his reality for a long time. The hero has already reached the limit of his patience. At that moment, a message appears. Apparently, the protagonist managed to reach the maximum level. With that, the divinity ascension restriction was removed. The message says that he is returning to Earth. After so long, it's finally happening. The hero finds it amusing that now that he has given up on everything, they felt pity. Maybe, in fact, these beings are just playing with the protagonist. Now the hero is reaching the power of a deity. The problem is that it doesn't make sense, since our hero still has carnal desires. Our hero wonders if he has always been full of emotions in life. It's been so long that his family probably no longer exists, so he no longer has the desire to return. The only thing that motivated him was the feeling of revenge. The message asks if he wants to return to his world. Our hero wants revenge on the one who destroyed his life. The hatred is so intense that he explodes the forest around him. Whoever it is, wherever they are, that person will meet their end, because he can be sure of that. A strong light engulfs the entire area. After 140 years, he is going back home. Year 2011, Earth before the Chashi Hyen incident. A radiant woman says that the days when the nightmares arrive are near. At that moment, a gate opens in the middle of the forest. This woman says that humanity must evolve. On the other side, thousands of red eyes wait to come through. The woman says people should not waste their blessings. Someone else says it was about time for Chashi Hyen to arrive. Korea, year 2025, Red Wolf Dungeon. A pack of wolves chases a young man, and the wolf is monstrous. Archer technique, powerful arrow. A powerful rain of magic saves the young man's life. The one who saved him was the leader Cha Eun-sol. She is grateful she arrived in time, but now they have to retreat. However, while he's distracted, a wolf attacks him from behind. Not even the leader could stop it. Unfortunately, he isn't the only one. All the members of his group are being eaten by the creatures. Cha knows she's in a dire situation, as the wolves seem endless. Her mana is also running out. If this continues, no one will escape this place alive. Amidst the chaos, she sees one of her men running. She still tries to call out to him, but she still has to deal with the wolves. And even she is losing control of the situation. Sia runs desperately through the forest. To him, joining this group was a bad idea, so he better escape while he still can. And it's at that moment that a portal opens in front of him. On top of that, an arrow lands right in front of him. Sia didn't expect to be followed this far. Cha Eun-sol is not willing to let him flee. Trying to talk his way out, Siu says he's happy to see his leader still alive. Right away, the girl grabs him by the shirt. She screams that she warned him about the dangers. Now the whole team is dead, but Siu only cares that he's still alive. Cha is at least glad to see the boy's true face. She gives up talking to him and tells him to leave, because she doubts that this time Siu's father will be able to cover for him. At that moment, his eyes are filled with hatred, and that's when he calls out to his leader. Before she can react, Siu attacks from behind. The boy's red ability spins around his hand and strikes her chest, throwing her far away. She only stops when she hits a tree. Siu grabs her hair, convinced the girl is worthless. He thinks the girl is too arrogant for his taste. Since she wants to be famous, he'll help her. Siu tells the story he plans to share, that because of Cha, everyone on the mission was annihilated. He activates the same magic again. Now Siu is going to end her life. At that moment, a storm forms in the sky, and lightning strikes right behind the boy. As the smoke clears, a figure appears in its place. Chashi Haiyan appears on the battlefield. Finally, he has returned to Earth. The protagonist laughs at the fact that the reward for reaching the maximum level is returning to Earth. That's why he swears revenge, and that is a promise. At that moment, the hero hears a voice mocking him. Siu thinks the protagonist is way too full of himself. He wants to know where our hero is from and who he's affiliated with. Chashi Haiyan just walks away. Siu can't believe he's being openly ignored. The hero observes that she was fighting and is now mortally wounded, and he's being ignored, making Siu even more furious. But the worst part is that he saw the boy with Cha, and now he can't let him go. Even though he doesn't know who this person is, he needs to get rid of him. Chashi Haiyan notices the girl is wearing a necklace that catches his attention. While the protagonist observes the girl, Siu warns him not to say anything, but he doesn't even wait for a reply and attacks. Yet a surge of energy pushes him back. The protagonist's power is overwhelming, and it's in that instant that Siu realizes the danger he's in. Chashi Haiyan says he had already understood what had happened. More than that, he remembers that the boy asked for his name. So he introduces himself as the Emperor of the Supreme Sword, with the name Chashi Haiyan. Without even realizing it, the hero is already right on top of him. The protagonist says that nothing he said will mean anything to Siu. The beam of energy shoots out and disintegrates the boy. The energy carves a path deep into the forest, creating a massive explosion. Not much is left of the poor boy. Then the hero turns his back on him. Now he only cares about the girl on the ground. He is the older brother. When Cha Eun-sul was a child, her parents scolded her to stop her tantrum. She's already growing up, her mother said. Her brother said she just really liked amusement parks, but if they stayed there any longer, both would make their mother's life harder. The real reason she didn't want to leave was because her brother wasn't coming. He would stay to study. He then patted her head affectionately. Cha Eun-sul's older brother promised that even while at university, he would always visit her. Whenever they were together, he'd take her to the amusement park. With that promise, she became happier. Back in the vehicle, she asked to be carried, and he fulfilled her request, knowing one day she wouldn't be that small anymore. At the scene of the accident, Cha Eun-sul blamed herself the entire time, thinking that if she hadn't been so stubborn, none of it would have happened. If it weren't for her, their parents would still be alive. Little Chit searched for her brother, but he vanished without a trace. In the present, her arm is being healed. Suddenly, she wakes up. The protagonist says she's going to be okay, but it will take time for her to fully recover. Cha asks who the man is, and he replies that he figured she wouldn't recognize him. He says that now he can't carry her anymore, but the reason is that now she's grown. Her reaction is to think that's impossible. For a second, Cha Eun-sul has a flash of her older brother. She remembers him telling her to be brave even if he's far away. Her first reaction is anger. Then comes a mix of emotions, and all she can say is where he has been all these years. Chashi Haiyan hugs her to comfort her. But as soon as she remembers her situation, the girl shoves him away, searching for Siu. Then her brother shows her what's left of the man who was attacking her. Cha Eun-sul is in shock. The girl asks who did this, and he takes the responsibility. At that moment, Cha Eun-sul grabs her brother and says they have to run. Later, in the apartment, Chashi Haiyan says it's been decades since he saw this place and everything is still in the same place. His sister says that director Seo Kang-jing will come after them. This man, besides being the father of the boy who attacked her, is the director of the Aurora Guild and a former gang member known to be very dangerous. He is also one of Korea's 11 high-rank hunters. Cha Eun-sul should have reported what happened with the mission a long time ago, so Seo Kang-jing must have found out about his son by now through other means, and she'll be the #1 suspect, since she was the only survivor of the mission. Chashi Haiyan asks if that was what his sister was worried about. If that's the case, then he'll just get rid of this Seo Kang-jing guy too. But the girl scolds him to stop talking nonsense. That man is over level 50, and he didn't become an executive by chance. Besides, she's already going crazy with her brother, who vanished 14 years ago, suddenly returning and talking a bunch of nonsense. She says that after their parents were gone and her brother disappeared, things were really hard for her. Once again, she wants to know where he's been all this time. For the first time, Chashi Haiyan gets confirmation about what happened to his parents. Then he comments that his sister finds the way he talks strange. The protagonist says that all this time he lived in a place called Murim, but before saying more, he wants to understand everything. He wants to know what a hunter is, what a guild is, and if this world also has the concept of levels. Cha Eun-sol tells him to take it easy, as it's a lot of information, but she prefers to leave that topic for later. She has something to do now. The archer is heading to the Aurora Guild, so he should wait for her. Cha-shi Hyeon goes to his room and is impressed by how nothing has changed. The protagonist also reflects that his sister has become stronger. Now he has to be the cool older brother he couldn't be all these years. To start, he's going after this so-called Seo Kang Jin. At that moment, a loud noise comes from the apartment entrance. There are 3 men in black. One of them activates a spell to break in. The 3 stand in the doorway ready to fight. One of them wants to know where the girl is. Cha-shi Hyeon wasn't expecting this. Seo Kang Jin himself came after her. Cha Eun-sil headed straight to the Aurora Guild office, but she's worried she'll be arrested the moment she steps into the building. She even considers if there's anyone she can ask for help. At that moment, the vice leader of the organization, Lee Ji-hee, comes asking if she's okay. She thought the girl was on a mission with the guild leader's son. She wants to know if something happened. Cha Eun-sil didn't expect to run into Lee Ji-hee. After all, this woman is one of the strongest in South Korea, truly loyal and fair, but always a mystery about what she's thinking. Maybe this is her only chance. Back at the apartment invasion, Cha-shi Hyeon finds the whole thing outrageously bold. He scolds the intruders, saying a person shouldn't break down someone else's door. One of the warriors gets agitated, but the leader tells him to calm down. Seo wants to know where Cha Eun-sol is. He doesn't care about the hero. The protagonist says he's looking for whoever killed his son, so the hero reveals that it was him. Immediately, the man loses control. But for Cha-shi Hyeon, that's exactly how it should be. Seo wants to see if he's really that strong. The two go all in, clashing with full force. At the same time, Lee is very eager to meet this Cha-shi Hyeon. Seo attacks, but the protagonist dodges the strike. He analyzes that his opponent has a lot of energy in his sword. Looks like this is one of those hunters his sister mentioned. Thinking back, that boy was using a strange skill similar to this. Maybe it's worth running a few experiments. His opponent prepares to strike again. Seo Kang Jin comes in with a combo of blows. Until the last second, the protagonist doesn't even flinch. When the sword hits him, a barrier seems to block the blow. Apparently, the hero has already figured things out. Cha-shi Hyeon believes his opponent is on the level of Supreme Master, which is actually impressive. Our hero blocked the attack with just one hand. As if it were nothing, the protagonist asks if there are about 1,000 more people like him. Taking the opportunity, the subordinates move to assist their director. A beam of light hits one of their shields. Cha-shi Hyeon gets angry for being interrupted. That's when he sees a fiery glow. The mage releases a fireball at him. Seeing that, they believe they've won the fight. Taking the chance, one of the warriors draws his sword. Cha-shi Hyeon then grabs his blade effortlessly. And for him, things are starting to get fun. For a second, the warrior stares into an abyss of power. The protagonist shoved him away using only his energy. He can't understand how someone can be that strong. It makes him wonder who this person really is. According to his sister, he's only been gone for 14 years. And the guys he's fighting are on a martial master level, which means they're extremely talented. Humanity has managed to reach Murim's level in just 14 years and even has multiple Supreme Masters. Quite impressive. But they're still not as strong as the 10 Great Martial Masters. Cha-shi Hyeon remembers when he stood face to face with them. The protagonist says the Jigu ranking didn't include him. Because of that, he decided to start from scratch. In the end, he was the only one still standing. Meanwhile, the protagonist's sister is on the road. For her, so much is happening at once that she's going crazy. Now the vice leader suddenly wants to meet her brother, and she can't tell if that's good or bad. She remembers that Lee said if she helped them reunite, the vice leader would personally cover up the entire scandal that's unfolding. That definitely wasn't an offer she could refuse. Lee, meanwhile, is thinking that she doesn't want Cha-shi Hyeon as her enemy. Later, she tries to confirm with Cha Eun-sol that her brother disappeared years ago. Exactly 14 years ago, she says. Lee does the math and realizes that adds up to 140 years. She can't even imagine how strong he must be. Then she wants to know what kind of person he is, and Cha Eun-sol says her brother is polite and kind, and very good at his studies. The boy even got accepted into a prestigious university on a full scholarship. More than that, he's the kind of person who never gives up. If he starts something, he has to see it through to the end. Cha-shi Hyeon points to the last guy who attacked him. He found his power interesting, so he wants to see it again. At that moment, he punches someone who tries to attack him from behind. The mage who was preparing a spell becomes terrified when he sees that. He fires, but Cha-shi Hyeon's shield blocks it with no trouble. Now it's his turn to use some tricks. The protagonist summons massive ice creatures. In a second, the mage is frozen. The one with the shield decides to run for his life, but his escape is cut short by a magical barrier. He doesn't even notice when a bolt of lightning hits his forehead. Their leader thinks it's ridiculous that the guy with the shield exposed the stairs so carelessly. Only one remains now. Besides, the protagonist believes no thug is truly loyal to the end. Seo thinks his opponent is a mage, but no magic should be able to block his attacks. And also, he hadn't noticed before, but the apartment is intact despite the battle. Maybe it's protected by a barrier. Seo asks if the hero knew they were coming and got ready in advance. Chashi Hyeon says he used the Sword of the Mind to protect the apartment because he didn't want them to destroy it, but he knows it's hard to explain what that means. Still, the moment they entered his home, they were already inside his territory. But Siu swears he won't go down alone. His berserk ability is activated. He unleashes an explosion of energy. Chashi Hyeon is impressed that he managed to boost his powers so much, hoping to sacrifice himself. Siu ignores him and charges forward. He unleashes a flurry of blows. It seems he's already lost complete control of his mind. A sword comes flying toward our hero. Chashi Hyeon says he's going to teach Siu some respect, and with just one strike, he hits him, slicing him in two with a single motion. The protagonist tells him to feel honored, because he took a blow from the Emperor of the Supreme Sword. Lee and his sister finally arrive at the apartment, and they catch the protagonist in the act of cleaning the house. But he says he was just warming up, even if he's made a mess in red. Cha-eun-sol says he just got back and is already causing trouble, but her brother says she should go to Murim and get stronger. The protagonist then notices the vice leader. He senses that her energy resonates with celestial cultivation martial arts. Lee is amazed that the protagonist can even use sound transmission. Until now, she thought she was the only one until she went to the other world. The next day, Cha-eun-sol is asleep in her room. Suddenly, she wakes up. Without thinking twice, she runs. Afraid, Cha-eun-sol calls for her brother. That's when she hears his voice. Chashi Hyeon even jokes, asking if she thought he had disappeared again. Relieved that it wasn't a dream, she asks why he's up so early, but he asks her to wait a second and checks his phone. And it seems like something has caught his attention. It's been a week since the protagonist returned, but everything still feels like a dream. Vice leader Lee Ji-hee only said they'd meet again. After that, some people came and cleaned the apartment. On the same day, a news report came out detailing the tragic fate of Siu Jong-yoon and the retirement announcement of his father, Siu Kang-jin. Lee Ji kept her promise. Since Cha-eun-sol was the only survivor of the last mission, the guild will keep an eye on her for a while. And now the vice leader has summoned her brother, raising the question of what she's planning. All she can do is hope her brother stays safe. Lee Ji-hee is sitting alone in a cafe. Chashi Hyeon finds it funny how she doesn't seem to worry about anything. After all, she's always surrounded by bodyguards. First, she says he arrived quickly, and then clarifies. They're not bodyguards, just one guard. When Chashi Hyeon takes a sip of the tea, he recognizes the taste. Lee says she used to stop by the city of Homen just to have that tea. Of course, back when she did so in Murim. The protagonist appreciates that she got straight to the point. She explains that 3 people traveled to the other world. Besides the 2 of them, there's also the leader of the Twilight Guild, Park Tae-hoon, with whom her guild has a deep rivalry. Lee ended up discovering a few things after speaking with their leader, like the fact that in 2011 he woke up in a cave, and beside him was a book titled Celestial Cultivation Martial Arts. When he left the cave, he found himself in the world of Murim. It was exactly the same experience the protagonist had. He received the same message. If he wanted to return to his world, the boy had to go all the way through that one. Chashi Hyeon came back right when the Hunter and Raid era began, and it's probably connected to their journey to that other universe. Lee asks what he knows about the dungeons. He says that 14 years ago, when a goddess appeared, raids, monsters, and class systems just like an RPG came with her. The protagonist wants to know how she and Park returned to this world, and Lee replies that they died. Immediately, she senses the energy shift. Our hero remembers that they asked him to witness the end of that world. Chashi Hyeon is deeply agitated. He wonders if the goddess knows who sent him to Murim. Just as reaching the maximum level granted his return to Earth, there must be an equivalent reward for doing the same as a hunter. That's probably how he'll get the answers he's looking for. Lee becomes a bit nervous about what's happening. Our hero demands to know why she's approaching him. She then asks if they can take a walk. Lee explains that her guild was on the verge of conflict with Park, but now they've lost their leader. And since the hero was responsible for that, she asks that he take responsibility. The vice leader wants Chashi Hyeon to join her guild in a managerial position. In return, she promises fame and fortune. Our hero says that since she's his sister's superior, he can't ignore the offer. But even so, he'll refuse. When asked why, he says he prefers to act alone. And there's one more thing. Chashi Hyeon doesn't want to be subordinate to someone weaker than him. Lee reflects on what he just said, and proposes they settle it with a test to see who's stronger. The protagonist says he spent about 140 years in Murim. The vice leader replies that age and skill aren't directly proportional. Chashi Hyeon agrees because even if someone spent 300 years there, they still wouldn't be as strong as him. Lee says she wants to see for herself. A surge of energy leaves her and reaches across the field to the protagonist. The power takes the shape of an eye made of magic. The ability is called Dance of Shadows. All of his senses are affected and everything around him begins to darken. Producing this technique on a wide scale clearly requires immense energy. This is Lee's unique power. It seems she has created a mini-dimension. From the outside, it looks like nothing's changed except they've vanished. In Murim, people called her the Scarlet Cherry Blossom, and she never failed a single assassination mission. Chashi Hyeon already suspected she was someone who fought to the bitter end. Now there are only 2 options. It's a fight for survival. Even though she threatens him, the hero believes the ability's purpose isn't to trap the opponent. And in the same instant, she already has a blade to his neck. Lee says he's right. Chashi Haiyan dodges the knife. Lee shifts the blade's angle. With just the palm of his hand, the protagonist blocks every strike. Even with that speed, she can't get past his defense. She then prepares for another flurry of attacks. With the next barrage, the protagonist ends up leaping backward. Now at a distance, he comments that she has a peculiar fighting style, the martial style of Murum's greatest assassin, the Dark King. She's stunned that he figured it out with just one glance. Chashi Haiyan says he once fought someone who used it, but at the time that person was inexperienced, because he accidentally defeated him in a single second. The protagonist makes an offer. If she can defeat him using up to 3 styles, they'll join the guild, but that last strike already counts as the first. Lee accepts the challenge. Chashi Haiyan finds it fascinating that she completely disappeared from his senses. It's as if she became invisible. 3 bursts of energy come flying toward him. He finds the movement interesting. The protagonist tries to dodge. Even as he flees, the magic keeps chasing him. Chashi Haiyan now prepares his technique. He deflects the strike with his energy. The protagonist comes out without a scratch. But even so, he acknowledges her power. It's magnificent. In the very next moment, she attacks him again. That was the second style. Lee then creates distance. The vice leader admits she's heard about the protagonist. She knows he was the strongest of all the masters. That's why Chashi Haiyan must be the strongest. From the ground, stakes of energy rise. Lee then declares something. If she defeats him, then she'll be the strongest in the world. The protagonist finds the challenge intriguing. With that show of power, he's momentarily speechless. This is her ultimate attack, the technique of the Shadow Dagger. Lee puts everything she has into it. The shadows close in from all directions. To defend, he uses the Sword of the Mind, creating a massive explosion. Light and shadow battle to overpower one another. The energy strikes Lee. A massive boulder comes flying toward her, but her body doesn't move, as if something's holding her back. At the last second, the protagonist saves her. That was the third style. It's over. Chashi Haiyan asks if she wants to continue. Trembling, she admits defeat. After that, the sky returns to normal. She won't fight anymore, but in exchange, she wants to know one thing. Lee wants to know what he did, because for a moment, she felt like she was fighting something she could never conquer. Chashi Haiyan says she's right to be confident using that space. In that realm, she would be stronger than any normal person. The last word catches her off guard. She then asks what level he managed to reach. In the end, the protagonist concludes it was a good fight. Because of that, he agrees to join Aurora, but they'll need to support him with materials and information. Still, he'll be a freelancer, not an official member. They'll be allies, so to speak, because our hero doesn't want to take orders from anyone. Lee agrees on one condition. He must promise never to join the Twilight Guild, no matter what happens. And so he swears. Swearing by his name as the Emperor of the Supreme Sword. Lee finds that name a bit too flashy. Also, Chashi Haiyan says he doesn't want to be followed anymore. This is the final warning. The vice leader promises she won't do anything to damage their relationship. After that, he rips his shirt. That's his sign of apology. Chashi Haiyan admits he was provoking her, but it's because he wanted to see a high-rank hunter in action. For a second, he even seems a bit embarrassed. But she says she didn't mind because it allowed him to fight at full strength without holding back. Curious, our hero asks why she chose to learn an assassination style above all others. Lee replies it's because she once had the desperate thought of needing to end someone. And with that, the subject ends. Our hero recalls the messages he used to receive about what he needed to do to return to his world. Chashi Haiyan feels the same drive for vengeance she does. A car waits at the edge of a dirt road. The guard already seems concerned, until finally she gets in and he asks if she's okay. The man noticed she used the Dance of Shadows, and the woman says she couldn't even scratch her target with that technique. As expected, he's far beyond any normal standard, so now she's completely out of mana. Worse, she didn't even attack him. She doesn't even know how he was defending. Lee admits she was defeated. The man then asks if she plans to send the protagonist to the festival. The vice leader says he's going to be a key player against Park. She remembers a man telling her she must follow his lead, because he is the martial god. Without Chashi Haiyan, she knows they're doomed. The protagonist finally arrives home. But before he can say anything, his sister runs and hugs him. And he can't even tell at first why she's acting that way, because now she's trying to crush him with a hug. From now on, she doesn't want him going anywhere or getting involved in anything dangerous. She's afraid he'll disappear again. Chashi Haiyan understands how she feels, but he reveals that he's thinking of becoming a hunter, and his sister is not even a little happy about it. The protagonist explains that the mystical cube he has was given to him by Lee Jigu. With this object, he can access his status window. Chashi Haiyan then holds the item. Immediately, the cube begins to glow. The item gradually starts disintegrating. Even the protagonist begins to feel a bit disappointed that nothing is happening. Chashi Haiyan grumbles, thinking Lee is a scammer, but his sister tells him to try accessing his status screen. 2 images appear, one showing that he's at max level and the other at level 1, stating that he has no class. The orange one is from Murim, and only he can see it. On the other side, the blue one, it shows his hunter status. His sister wants to see what kind of class he got, and she seems surprised. Then the girl celebrates, saying that his destiny is not to be a hunter, and that's something worth celebrating. In this world, there are 6 basic classes: warriors, shield bearers, mages, clerics, archers, and rogues. Everyone starts with a basic class that can't be changed and later evolves into an advanced one. For example, Chai Eun-sul, an archer, became a sharpshooter. But the protagonist doesn't have any of those, which to her is proof that he's just a normal person. Of course, a normal person can still be a hunter, but the problem lies in the abilities. That's why she hopes he'll give up. A hunter needs experience points to level up and gain skills to fight monsters. In contrast, someone without a class would need to learn techniques manually. For reference, the cheapest and simplest melee combat cube costs 20 million won. That's why hunters with classes level up automatically. Those without one have to keep pouring money into it. So the question remains, Chai Eun-sul doesn't exactly have money, but then he remembers that Lee is going to sponsor him. Unfortunately for her, he didn't fall for her bluff. Looking back, if he hadn't made that alliance, he'd be in serious trouble right now. But there's more to it. The fact that he was a martial genius in Murim here on Earth means he's someone with no talent at all. In the Chiak Mountains, this is a tutorial raid from the Aurora Guild, but it can also be described with different words. It's the bunny raid, which is suddenly exploded by an arrow. Chashi Haeyeon thinks it's ridiculous that they have to go all out just to catch a simple rabbit. His sister says that many rookie hunters come to this region, take it lightly, and end up in trouble. That's a luminous stone. It holds raw, unrefined, natural energy. It's worth a lot of money, and is also the reason nuclear power plants disappeared. Chai Eun-sul tells her brother to be careful because anything can happen in a dungeon. Before she even notices, he takes out a bunch of rabbits at once. What bothers her is that he's ignoring her completely. Meanwhile, the protagonist realizes that when he uses martial arts powers, he doesn't earn hunter points. Chashi Haeyeon looks over his ability, wondering if he made the wrong choice. The power he received is just a basic dagger technique. His sister calls him out for asking for a free power, since he received a Class D ability. Chai Eun-sul comments that she doesn't know what kind of contract he made, but it's obvious to her that that woman plans to take advantage of him. The protagonist continues to ignore her, and he seems deeply irritated. Even the girl notices the atmosphere has changed, but before she can touch him, he grabs her hand and asks if she doesn't have somewhere else to be. Chai Eun-sul is in shock. Exactly 337 rabbits. That's how many her brothers sense with his heightened perception. She thinks that's way too much for someone who's supposedly a beginner. That's the moment when her brother walks away. Chashi Haeyeon can't help but feel humiliated. He gets a D skill despite being someone who reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship. On top of that, he's labeled a classless nobody. Chashi Haeyeon draws his weapon into the air and channels his energy. When he lands, a crater forms beneath his feet. That army of rabbits glares at him suspiciously. He hears his sister yelling at him, and he jokes that she should save that anger for later, because right now he's thinking about how to cook these guys. Several warning messages appear at once. They're instructions on how to use the blade. He gets even more annoyed when the system tries to guide him. As far as he's concerned, fun and games are over. All the rabbits attack at once. They look more like beasts now. Whom do they think they are to try to teach something? With ease, the protagonist cuts them all down. He was told that the hunters emerged 14 years ago, so it will still take at least 100 years for anyone to reach his level. Several messages appear again. A notification about a dagger technique. This seems to be something new. Chashi Haeyeon asks his sister what those messages mean. He says the windows are too small and he would like to enlarge them. His sister, on the other hand, is very worried about what he just did. The protagonist says it must be due to a bug or something like that. But Chai Eun-sul doesn't understand how he managed to reach a plus in swordsmanship so quickly. Something seems to catch the hero's attention. He asks if its passive gains points with passive skills that don't use mana, and she agrees. The protagonist looks quite happy to hear that. His skill is described as a supreme treasure of divine origin, requiring a plus proficiency, something that surpasses perfection. Chashi Haeyeon believes this will make the future much easier. He then prepares to strike. His blow creates a powerful wave of energy. Apparently, he can gain skill points using martial arts. That must be why Korea's top hunters are Lee Ji-hae and Park Tae-hoon, because they must all have acquired a unique skill. Upon hearing this, Chai Eun-sul looks at her own bow. Then she calls her brother, asking him to teach her martial arts. Chai Eun-sul says that she already suspected it before, but now she is sure that he is very strong. She remembers the things that happened in the Red Dungeon. Unless she gets stronger, she won't be able to prevent it from happening again. For sure, Chai Eun-sul will keep regretting it, but she knows she won't ever be as strong as her brother. Before she gets more emotional, he promises that yes, he will teach her. This will be the first time the protagonist has a disciple, which is a good thing, since he won't always be able to be by her side, so she will learn to protect herself. Now that everything is settled, he asks her to follow her master. The two of them run across the open field together. Chai Eun-sul asks what he wants to do now. She wants to know if he's going to keep using the hunter's skills. At that moment, two rabbits attack them both. The protagonist immediately prepares to use his martial arts, blasting them with one strike. Our hero replies that he has no idea what his future as a hunter will be like. Even now, having discovered how to level up, he still wants a class skill. Our hero remembers that Lee managed to evolve using martial arts and his rogue skills, so he also needs to find a class that suits the protagonist. That's when a light goes off in his head. Our hero then jumps into the air, hovering above the rabbits. He charges his energy in his hand. Any class skill related to martial arts will be useless, and other types will be hard to fuse. But what about magic? With one attack, he destroys the entire field. His sister is worried that he is acting rashly, but he's quite satisfied because with magic, he would have many more options. That's why he will become a mage. Only Shai Dunsol gets nervous because she already explained that he can't just choose a class, but obviously, he doesn't even care. After experiencing both systems, it became clear that they are very different. Mirim's system no longer has any useful function in this world. Meanwhile, his sister is happy that she won't have to save up anymore for a while. On the other hand, the Hunter interface shows everything useful in a friendlier way, as if it were made by two completely different people. The Hunter system is reliable and quickly rewards its user, and with effort, anyone can become stronger. Mirim's system is much harder and slower to evolve, forcing the user to risk their life repeatedly. The Celestial Goddess is a legendary figure who created the martial arts of celestial cultivation. When he woke up in the cave, he still hadn't realized that finding that book was either great luck or divine intervention. Using that logic, the goddess gave the Hunter system to humans. That's when the protagonist realizes the one who created the Mirim system was the celestial god. With Lee's support, it's been a month since the protagonist has been adventuring in dungeons. Fighting the chicken, our hero finally feels like he's back in Korea since there's no food more Korean than that. With that, he's already at level 22. Meanwhile, his sister has been studying the 365 blood vessels. Chai Eun-sul also learned how to channel her inner arts. Even though she's too old to learn to fight, there's always a way. Curious, his sister asks what he's going to do. He says she can spit out as much blood as she wants. Obviously, that scares her a lot. Our hero clears and opens all the QA channels she had. But after that, Chai Eun-sul improved a lot. She even almost burned his hair a few times. The vice director says the protagonist is doing well. It's time for them to formalize the agreement. Our hero finds it funny how she's always so direct. The protagonist says it's been a while since she called him. Lee gets close to his face and invites him on a date. After the surprise, even though it's the first time he's been asked out, the protagonist ends up refusing. Lee says a new dungeon appeared in Bucheon. The danger level is 10, and hunters need to be at least level 45 to 50 to go there. So no low-level hunter can go, unless it's our hero. Chashi Hyeon asks why she wants to go to such a dangerous place with only 2 people. First, she wants to take control of that dungeon, but she also wants the hero to level up as fast as possible as a hunter. The protagonist asks if she's trying to carry him, but Lee says that the way he talks doesn't match an old man from Mirim at all. Our hero asks why she wants him to become strong. The vice leader thinks a bit before answering. Lee tells him about the Solar Festival, which is held annually by the Aurora and Twilight Guilds. It's a battle to decide the best in Korea, promoted as something to bring harmony among hunters, but in reality it's used to evaluate who's the strongest. The 2 guilds are in constant war, fighting over dungeons, and people have no idea what happens inside because it's never made public. Chashi Hyeon wants to know the reason for these fights, already assuming dungeon disputes aren't the only cause. She says it's because of Park. He suddenly started attacking Aurora out of nowhere, as if he had gone insane. All because he wants everyone to start following some so-called celestial god. At that moment, the protagonist gets riled up and starts yelling at her to tell him everything about it, but Lee says all she knows is that Park received a message from Mirim. The protagonist thinks the problem is that he can't even see other people's status windows to know if they're lying. The vice leader says she doesn't understand how he can treat her as guide and everyone else so coldly just because of one message. Not to mention that before the protagonist, the 2 of them were the only ones who went to Mirim. That leaves Chashi Hyeon thoughtful. Lee then officially asks him to participate in the festival representing the Aurora Guild. Lately, the balance of power has been leaning toward the Twilight Guild. That's because they've been forcefully taking over dungeons. And when this imbalance is exposed at the festival, it might mean the end of Aurora. Especially now that they've lost one of their key members, the former director, because of our hero. But Chashi Hyeon still doesn't understand why she wants him to evolve as a hunter. Lee explains that the Solar Festival draws media attention from around the world, and she knows the hero doesn't want to be exposed because his skills might provoke the hunters. Or maybe he's confident enough to handle all of society on his own. That's why, to participate in the festival, he can only use hunter abilities, and since our hero owes her one, he has no way to refuse. And he doesn't even need to say anything because she already assumes he agreed. In this case, there are 6 mage skills and even 2 high-level ones, plus 1 from the sorcerer class. Thinking it over now, Chashi Hyeon figures that someday he'll probably have to fight this Park guy, so he's kinda coming out ahead with this deal. Then, our hero sees a little paper flying. Because unlike Mirim, in our world there are laws, and now the protagonist has to sign some contracts. They're just a few documents, payment guarantees, and confirmation that he's providing services to the Aurora Guild. Our hero realizes he needs to open a guild because he can't be a freelancer and represent Aurora in the festival. In the end, he needs to have a business ID. And also, for him to earn those cubes that are worth more than a house, he better sign right away. Apparently, she had been planning this from the beginning. Chashi Hyeon needs to create a name for his guild as a formality. He can write anything. But what he enters is no limits. Now they teleport to the mission. For some reason, our hero feels like he only leaves the house to go into dungeons. This one, by the way, is called Bird Monsters of Bucheon. Lee Ji says that these creatures are weak individually, but here there's an uncountable number of them. Chashi Haiyan senses at least 3,000 with his Kai, and the protagonist gets excited. For him, the more, the better. Our hero creates a spear of light. With this attack, he electrocutes the airborne creatures. Lee is shocked because he just learned that technique. But the hero says that for him, mana and ki work in a similar way. She tells him not to overdo it or his energy will run out quickly, but the protagonist doesn't believe that'll happen. Chashi Haiyan asks if dungeons only ever have one type of monster. His friend says yes, and the hero finds that odd. Lee says that since dungeons appeared 14 years ago, thousands have been discovered, and so far, there's never been a case of two monster types in the same dungeon. Something attacks the bird monster and throws what's left against the wall. A giant dragon roars in fury. On the edge of the lake, a man grabs some feed with a dish, throwing it to the fish. Somewhere in Seoul, in the house of the leader of the Twilight Guild, Park Tae-hoon, the guild leader's subordinate, Kim Chul-ho, informs him that the vice leader of Aurora has been acting strangely. According to his intel, she's been giving a lot of support to a rookie and has gone to many dungeons with him. But the leader doesn't seem to care much about that information. The assistant continues, saying the rookie is the brother of a guild member and he's someone who disappeared for 14 years and just returned. The assistant even has more to say, but the last bit catches Park's attention, and he asks where the rookie had been. Kim reviews his report and concludes that they don't know. But they do know that the former leader of Aurora didn't retire. He vanished after confronting this rookie because of his son. Park says that man is no longer alive. His assistant seems to find that a bit hard to believe. The leader states that Chashi Haiyan is the one who ended him, and that's why Park believes our hero came from Murim. Our hero stares at the defeated creatures. Chashi Haiyan thinks that using these abilities feels different from his Murim powers, but Lee calls him out since he's having too much fun. The problem is, he's already been in this dungeon for at least an hour, and he's probably running low on mana after destroying everything around. Chashi Haiyan wants to explain something to her. He says that in the case there was a skill that allowed him to exchange his life energy for mana. The protagonist explains that in Murim, he obtained the power of the ethereal body, granting him infinite abilities, and he also has supreme eternal vitality. But Lee is overwhelmed by all these strange bits of information, so the protagonist decides to simplify it. Our hero has an infinite energy flow. Even if the martial art is different, when you reach the supreme plane, everything becomes one. Practically, there's nothing he can't do since he's at the maximum level. With all that said, now Chashi Haiyan is going to handle the boss. Lee thinks that with someone like him, she has nothing to worry about at the festival. A creature tries to take the chance and charges toward her, but the creature doesn't even stand a chance. She then decides to focus on making her living. The sky is full of creatures, but Lee cuts them all down in seconds. After the attack, she grabs onto a mountain to avoid falling. She uses the rock to gain momentum and leaps. The vice leader goes from monster to monster, clearing them one by one. Lee then reaches the edge of the mountain, but it still doesn't seem to end. The monsters keep coming. When she gets back, Lee is going to change the dungeon's danger level because they're far more numerous than reported. She's taking advantage of a perfect team composition for the mission. A mage on the team, an archer, a cleric, a scout, an Anomaly class. At that moment, she feels that something is wrong. A group of giant dragons flies overhead. Besides being massive, she can't understand why there are two types of creatures in the same dungeon. And before getting hit, she jumps away to safety. But another one comes right after. Only this time, she prepares her magic. The problem is, another dragon she didn't see is also coming for her, and she gets struck midair. Lee realizes they're using demonic powers. The entire dungeon system has been broken. Luckily, she saves herself at the last second. The protagonist had been waiting for this moment. Lee gets irritated, realizing he already knew about these monsters, but he said there was a boss. He says he was saving them for last on purpose. Chashi Haiyan explains that he understands she froze from the shock, but he knows she can handle these monsters. Besides that, our hero says he's hungry and asks if she wants fried or grilled food, but the vice leader says it's not the time for jokes. Chashi Haiyan summons fire magic in one hand and lightning magic in the other. Together, these are some of his new abilities. He was waiting for them. All the dragons fly toward him. The sky is filled with dead monsters. While the protagonist fights, Lee says she thought he would use magic to fight, but for some reason, he's using his fists. Only Chashi Haiyan says this is pure magic. The vice leader is stunned by what she's seeing. A portal opens and more dragons appear to fight. Scared, she runs to help her friend. But for some reason, he doesn't move and allows himself to be surrounded. She attacks with her skill. The goal is to create an opening for them to escape, but some creatures don't move out of the way. Instead, they absorb the attacks. The monsters are sacrificing the smaller ones. Lee shouts for our hero. Now one thing is clear to her. The smaller creatures aren't moving on their own or by instinct. It's the larger ones commanding them. That's why they're throwing themselves in front of the attacks. Now she knows how to win. They need to take down the big ones. But her worry is whether her friend is okay. Lee remembers the last image of Chashi Haiyan. By the look in his eyes, he didn't dodge on purpose. It frustrates her to never know what he's thinking. Lee wants to help our hero, but it's the first time they're dealing with an anomaly, and he's pushing the limits of difficulty. At that moment, she has a good idea. With the creatures focused on the battle, one of them doesn't notice a girl on its back. Her plan is to find the monster causing all this chaos. But without noticing, another creature collides with hers. In free fall, she aims at another monster. To hold on, she uses one of her daggers. Finally, they're paying attention to her. But it's too late, and Lee believes that one-on-one she can handle it. So she activates the Shadow Dance. Only he isn't alone. This is a fight with no end in sight. But right then, a spell grazes her body. Moments later, a massive explosion erupts. The Vice Leader doesn't understand where so much energy is coming from. The protagonist is using divine sword magic, but he's creating far more than usual. She's witnessing his limitless power firsthand. Chashi Hayan says he's tired of playing hunter. Thousands of swords are conjured at once. A rain of light annihilates the monsters. In just seconds, they're obliterated. The fight is over, but one question remains. The danger of something like this happening in another dungeon. At this point, the dungeon danger level system might no longer be reliable. A group could be wiped out if this happened elsewhere. Maybe the Solar Festival isn't the top priority. But one thing's certain, Park Tae-hoon will want to take advantage of this. If she's not careful, Twilight will crush them. Lee doesn't know what to do at the moment. While she's distracted, someone puts something in front of her face. Chashi Hayan says she's too distracted. He's showing her a stone that's different from the others. She explains that it's a skill stone, and since it came from a big monster, its power will be as well. But Lee still seems distracted. The Vice Leader calls out to our hero and says she wants to tell him something. 1 month later, a group of young people talk about the Solar Festival and a rookie in one of the guilds. Apparently, our protagonist became famous on the internet. People say he's Aurora's secret weapon. Kim realizes he's screwed. During a Twilight meeting, the members are furious because they know nothing about the rookie who's become a sensation. One of them doesn't even realize that the guild leader is present at the meeting. Apparently, he's calm, but he immediately orders the man to sit down. Embarrassed, he does as commanded. The leader says Aurora revealed their trump card too early. Sooner or later, they'll find out if the protagonist is the real deal. But for now, they're going to take him out of the game. Kim Chu-ho is in the cafeteria, clearly very nervous. He looks at his watch, expecting someone to arrive any moment. Upon seeing his guest, he stands up immediately. The man is pleased that this person accepted his invitation. Our hero, Chashi Hayan, and the protagonist takes a good look around the place. Of course, he looks at the extended hand. In the end, he accepts the handshake. He then asks if the young man is Kim Chu-ho, the assistant he came to meet, but immediately remembers to be less informal. Because of that, Kim finds the protagonist quite rude. But that's exactly Kim's goal, to gather as much information about the hero as possible. Only observing this assistant, Chashi Hayan starts wondering if everyone in Twilight is just a bunch of fools. Kim places a magical soundproofing device on the table. When he presses the button, a sound-isolating curtain forms, cutting off all noise from inside and outside. Our hero finds it funny how eager he is for a private conversation. The first thing Kim says is that his guild wants to form a partnership with the protagonist. Chashi Hayan says that he's actually already cooperating with Aurora. Kim says he's aware of that, and that the protagonist is also receiving financial support. Besides that, they know about the Seokang Jin incident, and they've been tracking the protagonist in dungeons alongside Lee Ji-hai. Even so, they know the protagonist chose not to join Aurora. Instead, he created a one-man guild and built a friendly relationship with Aurora. Knowing all this, Kim deduces there's a gap between the protagonist and the guild, which is why he offers a deal, promising to give him everything he needs and more. Chashi Hayan changes his opinion of the man. He made a perfect pitch with solid arguments. Kim offers to explain the paperwork, but our hero refuses. The protagonist says he only came out of curiosity, but he realized it was all a waste of time. Still trying to salvage the negotiation, Kim says that if he doesn't participate in the festival, he'll make a lot of money. But Chashi Hayan says that, aside from owing a lot to Lee, he just doesn't like losing. Even so, Kim tries to stop him from leaving. He had so much more to say. A man asks the assistant how long he's going to keep staring at the door. The guild leader was there the whole time. Park recalls the one thing he asked of Kim. He wanted his assistant to keep the conversation going for as long as possible, since he was listening to everything from the start. Kim tries to apologize, but Park says it's no use now. What he saw was strange. He leaves the meeting wondering who exactly this Chashi Hayan is. Lee receives the report about what happened at the meeting and thinks Park must be really pissed. Our hero says Park has probably already figured out he came from Murim, but since his title didn't spread far, it's fine. As soon as he entered the diner, our hero felt Park raising his kai. Lee believes he won't bother them for a while now since his plan didn't go as expected. The protagonist asks how the investigation is going and the vice leader says that so far there haven't been any accidents, at least for now. He remembers when she thanked him for seeking out the real monster in the dungeon and saving her life. Our hero asks if he can help with anything else, but she says not for now. But she notices Chashi Hayan sounds a bit down. Before he can respond, his sister calls him and says it's time to go. With that, he hangs up the phone because the two of them are heading to a cemetery. Behind a glass, there's a photo of their family. Cha Yun-sul tells their father that her brother has finally returned. But our hero watches the scene from a certain distance. He thinks it was a mistake to come here. The protagonist has become a very different person. He can't even cry, not even in a situation like this. He didn't want to show this inhuman side of himself to his sister. It wouldn't do any good. Cha Eun-sul asks if he doesn't feel anything. She says he doesn't seem sad or even a little emotional. His sister insists that he say something. All he can say is "I'm sorry," because he's become someone who can't show what she wants to see. And that makes Cha Eun-sul really upset. The girl yells at her brother, saying he doesn't understand what she's saying. All she wanted was one thing. At that moment, she recalls a memory from when she was younger. She doesn't understand why he's changed so much and is now so cold. Chashi Hyeon doesn't feel like her brother anymore. But it no longer matters to her. She's lived alone for a long time anyway. His sister walks away from him. He keeps thinking he shouldn't have come here. Would she really want to know why he changed so much? He would like to understand why these things happened to him too. Suddenly, a message appears. It's a status window from Murim. It asks why the protagonist still maintains a human form. Chashi Hyeon has no idea what's happening. The new message tells the protagonist to stop denying. If he wants, they can make a new deal. Our hero thinks this person is still greedy, but now he's sure he's talking to the celestial god. The new message says it will end the protagonist's life again. Of course, Chashi Hyeon doesn't back down. He promises to find this god and destroy him. The message says the challenge is accepted. Then the panel disappears. Our hero becomes thoughtful again. He takes the threat of everything starting over very seriously, because all he has is his sister. Cha Eun-sul, looking back, realizes she's alone. Her brother didn't follow her. A few days later, a presenter appears very excited. She says the day everyone has been waiting for, to see their heroes explore dungeons and fight monsters, has finally arrived. As she announces the day has come, the great Korean event everyone was looking forward to. The Solar Festival has begun, a celebration made to promote harmony between the guilds, but it also allows people to see hunters in action. The protagonist thinks this festival feels like an Olympics. Lee explains that the public is fascinated by hunters. People see them like movie heroes. One of the goals of the Solar Festival is to make hunters' images more friendly. Lee notices something wrong with our hero. She puts her tea aside and asks the question on her mind. The vice leader asks if he fought with the team leader, Cha Eun-sul. It's no surprise they arrive looking grumpy together. She already guesses it's the hero's fault. Our hero asks Lee to help him find a house somewhere far and quiet. She looks confused, but when he says he received a message from Murim, she's shocked. Our hero isn't sure, but he believes the celestial god is coming for him. The protagonist doesn't know how this fight will go, but he doesn't want his sister involved. Lee is very confused by everything she's hearing. To her, it makes no sense. Disappearing from your sister's life for her own good sounds strange. But to the protagonist, he believes Cha Eun-sul doesn't need a brother like him. Like she said herself, the person she knew disappeared and never came back. So maybe he should have stayed in Murim. Lee can't take hearing that nonsense and punches him. The girl admits she doesn't like getting involved in other people's problems, but if her brother said something like that, she'd want to punch him too. She tells him he knows his sister less than she does. A man comes looking for Cha Eun-sul, but he finds the vice leader in a rather awkward situation. Lee tells the protagonist not to leave, she'll be right back. For some reason, the boy is left speechless. He just got a major reality check. Before the festival begins, the presenter invites everyone to watch the opening ceremony. Here comes the head of Aurora, Jang Jun-ho, a paladin. Alongside him is the vice of Twilight, Jang Sung-gyuk, a rogue. A girl says those two used to be in the same group. Now to the vice leader, a hand extends in greeting. For a second, it looks like anger will take over her. But Lee manages to greet Park politely. She also comments that the little boy who was her replacement has grown quite a bit. The man is offended, but his leader keeps him in check. Park retorts that he heard Lee is taking care of a rookie, and as always, wasting time on the weak. But what she hears is a threat that he's going to sever every important bond she has again, as if she were shaken by that. But her response is that she'll take his words as a compliment, though in truth, she's accepting his challenge. The Solar Festival begins now. A match has already started. The fight unfolds with a warrior using his flurry strike ability. With her shield in great difficulty, the girl tries to block the blows. The warrior seizes the moment to strike again with his spear. In the end, she can't withstand it and is defeated. The fifth one-on-one match ends with a Twilight member winning, and even with a blunt spear, he manages to seriously injure his opponent. Park is satisfied with the result, even though the match took longer than expected against someone he considers nothing special. Naturally, Lee finds his attitude extremely arrogant. In the end, the leader decides to leave, hoping the next match is more interesting. Lee simply watches, curious. At the exit, his vice leader is waiting. The rogue asks Park when he can finish off Lee Ji, but the leader tells him to relax. Her time is coming. At the moment, he's more interested in Cha Eun-sul. He wants to say hi. The presenter announces the Archer Survival Arena. Sounding excited to see the sharpshooters in action, she asks her partner who he's rooting for. The commentator says he's keeping an eye on Cha Eun-sul because she's young and shown great results so far. Even though, unfortunately, she recently had an accident in the Red Wolf dungeon. Some team members question why the vice leader left her in charge of the squad after what happened. Cha Eun-sul hears this and demands that if they've got something to say, they say it to her face. The two gossipers are left speechless. In the end, they leave with their tails between their legs. Cha Eun-sul already shows signs of mental fatigue. The reason is that she hasn't spoken with her brother since that day, and just thinking about it makes her anxious. Right then, she receives a message that someone came to speak with her. Naturally, Cha Eun-sul braces herself. To her disappointment, it's the vice leader. asking if she's okay. Cha Eun-sul seems suspicious, but Lee says she came to encourage her team. She says she was going to come with a protagonist, but he disappeared. Lee immediately realizes she's touched a nerve. Knowing what she's going through, the Vice advises the girl to talk to her brother. Cha Eun-sul asks why Lee is interfering in her life, and she replies that she's just concerned about the person she's investing in. To her, the Vice leader is shamelessly controlling her brother. She blames Lee for her brother wanting to become a hunter right after finally regaining a normal life. To Cha Eun-sul, he never should have entered this world. It doesn't make sense for him to want to get used stronger than he already is. It's clear to her that her brother is hiding something. With tears in her eyes, she says he's no longer the same person she knew. He's someone cold and distant now. The announcer says the Archer trial is about to begin. Cha Eun-sul asks for permission and apologizes for how she acted. But before she goes, Lee says her brother didn't want to change so much. She shares that she went through the same kind of suffering as Cha Shi-hyen. Lee says he fell into hell and spent a long time there. It's impossible to come out of something like that normal. And of course, he doesn't want his sister to see that side of him. But Cha Eun-sul finds it strange that she has to hear this from the Vice leader instead of from her own brother. It feels like she doesn't deserve his trust. Unlike Lee, who shares the same level as her brother. After Cha Eun-sul walks away, the Vice looks in the direction of someone. Apparently, he had been there the entire time listening to everything. Even if he won't admit it, she knows he cares too much about his little sister to abandon her like he claimed. Lee thinks that this attitude reminds her of Park. She grabs him, yells at him, saying that Cha Eun-sul is no longer a little girl and that he should be more honest. Lee doesn't believe that hiding intentions will do any good for their relationship. The Vice leader asks him to follow. Since she's going to show him a side of Cha Eun-sul he doesn't know. The flare signals the start. Figures emerge from the rubble. In moments, the 6 schemes from both guilds will face off. Park watches, terrified. What is about to happen? After all, he prepared something special. And so the game begins. On the radio, a voice named Charlie says they found the enemy. Team Golf says they're also in combat 200 meters away. Cha Eun-sul remembers the argument she had about her brother. Because of that, her anger takes over. What makes her even more upset is that he leaned on Lee instead of her. Some messages arrive about a pursuit, but Cha Eun-sul keeps thinking about the argument. She then spots the enemy, but the team reports that the target is too far for her. Minus 300 meters is beyond what a sniper can reach. But the girl takes the risk. Cha Eun-sul energizes her arrow and uses her sniper skill. The target even sees the attack coming, but there's nothing they can do. With that, the 6th member of Twilight is eliminated from the game. She then confirms that she hit the target and her team is left speechless. All Cha Eun-sul wants is not to be underestimated. As a child, she remembers that everyone pitied her situation for having lost her entire family. People said not even her brother's body was found, but she believes he was alive and well somewhere. It was at that moment that she saw it. A message on TV about a great change in the world. The goddess warned that humanity needed to evolve. And because of something so crazy like gods, monsters, and dungeons, she believed more than ever that her brother was alive somehow. After taking an aptitude test, she received the archer class and attended a hunter university on a scholarship. It's there that someone pours a milk carton over her head. People picked on her for being an orphan. The students also didn't like the fact that she attended the school for free. But before he could say anything else, the boy gets hit with a tray. Cha Eun-sul tells them not to be jealous, because when their parents meet the same fate, they'll understand. But the boy still insults her, so she challenges him to a fight outside. And that's how she graduated at the top and entered the most famous guild, Aurora. A blue creature charges forward. Cha Eun-sul uses her bow to defend herself, while she tries to reach the tip of the arrow. When she manages to, she drives the blade into the beast. Once again, she had to fend for herself. Lee shows up a bit late, saying he came to help. Obviously, she no longer needs it. The Vice then asks the rookie's name, who answers without hesitation. Because she caught the leader's attention, she became part of the leadership while still young. And at the time, Siu didn't like it one bit. In the end, this entire journey aligned with her goal. Cha Eun-sul wanted to become stronger, to survive without her brother and not let her mind weaken. That's why she constantly pushes herself to the limit. Cha Eun-sul looks at her necklace with the family photo. In the end, she felt it was all for nothing, because her brother abandoned her to be with Lee. She knows her brother is very strong, but even so, Cha Eun-sul isn't that weak. After the tantrum, she calms down a bit. Things are quieter than usual. Cha Eun-sul reports over the radio that she's changing position. That's when she notices. A rain of arrows comes her way. Unfortunately, she ends up getting hit right on target. A group reports that their target has just been located. Thankfully, the arrow didn't pierce her muscle, but the problem is the tips were supposed to be blunt, which wasn't the case. Apparently, they're using real weapons. The group leader reports that there's no signal in this area to call for help. Cha Eun-sul finds that amusing, and she says she's never needed something like that in her life. First, she throws the arrow away. Then, she prepares her bow, and finally, she tells them all to come at her at once. The leader gives the order. A rain of arrows falls from the sky, but they only find the reason. Cha Eun-sul leaps over them. She activates her archer skill. The tip of the bow is multiplied by magic. This time, it's her who unleashes a rain of arrows. Unfortunately, she misses one because of her injury, but he freezes upon seeing his entire team taken out all at once. On top of that, with training arrows, he never thought anyone could do so much damage at close range under those circumstances. Snipers are specialists at long range. Marksmen are focused on attacks in a single area, and rangers are the most agile. Even though Cha Eun-sol is still in pain, she's going to take care of the rest. But taking advantage of the opening, another enemy comes to attack. She manages to dodge. The attacks pass straight by as she uses the opportunity to strike. The burst of energy heads toward him, just grazing him. But since her ability works like a boomerang, the arrow curves back. And while he's yelling at Cha Eun-sol, he doesn't see what's happening. In the end, he's struck in the back. Another one goes down. Cha Eun-sol emerges victorious. In the end, the fight becomes a duel. Both stare each other down in the tension of battle. The one who was shot rises again. He takes the opportunity to attack her from behind. The arrow flies toward Cha Eun-sol. The worst part is she hadn't noticed what was happening. But in the last moment, the archer remembers her brother talking about using martial arts. Like a master, she catches the arrow midair. The shooter can barely believe what he's seeing. Cha Eun-sol comes like lightning. She delivers one of the hardest punches anyone has ever taken. Now for sure, that one isn't getting back up. Cha Eun-sol is certain there's only one left. She promises she's going to beat that guy up, but the archer starts crying, saying he surrenders. At that moment, reinforcements arrive. Without even realizing it, the archer takes an arrow to the head. The team thanks Cha Eun-sol for the excellent work. Even while thanking them, she comments that they took too long. At the end of the 6th round, the Aurora team wins the competition. Apparently, the signal dropped and no one saw what happened. But apparently, Cha Eun-sol defeated 4 competitors at once. Even the 2 who were judging her earlier have to admit she was incredible. In the end, she admits she didn't want to receive help. Cha Eun-sol has the ability of clairvoyance thanks to her brother. A helicopter flies over the area, and watching everything is the protagonist. Of course, Lee is beaming with pride. But obviously, Cha Si-hyun is happy too, though he jokes saying she survived thanks to martial arts. In the end, he admits he doesn't know his sister very well, but he admits she's stronger. That's why our hero promises he won't treat her like a child. So in the end, he really is very proud of his little sister. Lee believes that at least the broadcast went down, and Park couldn't see what happened, but he was in fact watching, and he saw her use martial arts. The next day, at the amusement park, Cha Eun-sol wants to hear from her brother's mouth how well she did in the challenge. But what he does is pretend it has nothing to do with him. She says that maybe then for her brother, who's the strongest person in the world with the title blah blah blah, it's not impressive at all, especially since she ran out of mana in the end. But that's not the case. To him, she was strong. More than that, she's been forging her own path. Our hero begins by apologizing for hiding things from her, all because he just wanted to act like a big brother. The reason is that he still misses that little child, so much so that he didn't even notice she's now a woman. Cha Si-hyun says he became a hunter to pursue the person who took him into that world. He believes that by reaching the maximum level, he'll be able to do that, and he didn't want to drag his sister along. Cha Eun-sol even teases him, saying it wasn't so hard to say those things. The only thing she wants is for her brother to promise he'll never disappear again, and he has to say it with all the words. Cha Eun-sol says that all this time he wasn't honest with her as his sister. She felt abandoned. Whether he wants to or not, he understands her. That's why he makes a pinky promise. And before it ends, he has one more thing to say. His title isn't blah blah blah, but rather Emperor of the Supreme Sword. Of course, she tells him to go screw himself. All spectators are warned that in 1 hour, the great battle will begin. Now it's the protagonist's turn to enter the game, and Cha Eun-sol asks if he's really going to wear that outfit. The hero says it's comfortable, but before leaving, he comments that it was strange how that group specifically targeted her. Cha Eun-sol says it's pretty normal for the 2 groups to fight like that in dungeons, but this was the first time she saw them being so blatant. But to her, it only proves that she's an ace of Aurora, and hearing that, the protagonist can only think that they're definitely siblings. It makes him thoughtful, because he remembers the god's threat. Later, the leader of Aurora comes to meet our hero in person. Lee's promise is that he'll be the vanguard in the great battle. After the introductions, the leader goes to see the other members. Cha Si-hyun asks if that's the Amoonga Brain boss Lee never mentioned, and being weaker than her, the guy is level 60. They say goodbye, but before she leaves, she warns him via telepathy that he can't use martial arts. Even though our hero is sure no one would even notice the difference, he promises to behave. But before she goes, the protagonist says that thanks to her help, he made peace with his sister. Lee is visibly relieved to hear that. In the end, she wishes him good luck. The other members take advantage of the fact that the bosses have left and strike up a conversation with the protagonist, saying they've heard a lot about him. But the truth is he's not listening at all, because he can't stop thinking about how strange it was that group went after his sister. And that's when someone very unwelcome shows up. Leader Park fakes surprise at catching the team in a more relaxed moment. Our hero concludes that the being behind Twilight is the celestial god, so the guild leader is no one to be underestimated. Park tells the group that he just came to say hello, but no one really believes that, which leaves him with few options. So he comes clean and says he came to check out the star rookie. With that, the leader of the enemy guild welcomes the protagonist. And with a big smile on his face, he says they haven't met yet. Even knowing it's a lie, the protagonist agrees that it's the first time they've seen each other. Park expected his energy to resonate, but that wasn't the case, which leaves him confused, since it would have been the proof he needed to confirm that it was our hero who taught martial arts to Cha Eun-sol. The one Chashi Haiyan says he recognizes is the assistant. Out of politeness, our hero expresses regret that their relationship didn't progress further. The protagonist takes the chance to personally thank him for what happened to his sister during the hunter's trial. He makes it clear that there will be payback. Park simply says he's dying to see it. Chashi Haiyan doesn't care who this man is because they mess with his little sister. He promises to put on the greatest show the audience has ever seen and wipe out the other guild. The announcer, very excited, thanks everyone for their patience. The moment of the main attraction has arrived. The great battle between Aurora and Twilight is about to begin, and the crowd goes wild at the announcement. As Aurora's vanguard, the representative is the rookie, who's the hottest topic right now. The guild's vanguard, Chashi Haiyan, leader of the Limitless Guild. For the first time, someone from outside is representing the guild. No one knows who he is, and that will be his secret weapon. Now comes Twilight's vanguard, the mage with blazing charisma, the king of fire, draconic Ryu Sun-jun. Chashi Haiyan finds the cheesy comment about charisma funny. Thus begins the first battle. Park hopes his mage makes the fight last as long as possible so he can see all of our hero's abilities. Ryu knows that's exactly what his boss wants, but the fight barely begins and his opponent is already flying. Levitation is a simple skill, and the announcer says it's an interesting way to start a fight. Even the guild leader is finding it confusing, but Yunli knows he's just showing off. Mage Ryu is level 50. He's a hunter roughly on the same level as Siu Kang Jin. If the protagonist could use his martial arts, the fight would be easy, but since he can only use hunter skills, it might be a bit more complicated. Chashi Haiyan's current level is 53. The truth is, he still lacks real combat experience as a hunter, and on top of that, he's being closely watched. It's clear that Park is dying to see the martial arts abilities in action, but our hero is going to leave him waiting. The protagonist starts the fight. In response, Ryu creates a barrier to defend himself. Even while defending, the mage finds it strange that his opponent is using basic level attacks. Ryu dispels the magic with his flames. The mage remains calm because he still has a trick up his sleeve. There are 3 specialties in this class. First is the non-combatant, the craftsman, then comes the elemental specialist, the arcanist. Lastly, the one who seems more like a supernatural being than a mage, the warlock class. Normally, they focus on support, but some manage to develop deadly attacks. But for Ryu, standing back and watching isn't his style. He says that if the protagonist has something better to show, now's the time. Then he delivers an explosive kick to our hero. Our hero is thrown backward. He feels the heat of the flames on his skin. Then comes the explosion. Ryu shows off his fire skill that he's been refining since youth, using close combat, something rare in this class. Chashi Haiyan used to believe he was the only mage from Murim, but now it's clear why the two share many similarities, and why Ryu gave him such a bad feeling. Ryu gives one final warning, then he activates his unique ability. He demands to see everything our hero has to offer. The fire dragon comes straight at him. Chashi Haiyan decides to show him a surprise. With just a gesture, the fire magic is sliced in half. Ryu hits the ground face first. He has no idea how something like that is possible. Even the announcer can't believe what she saw. All she can say is that, to her, the fire simply evaporated. But some spectators think it looked different. To them, it was like the flames were crushed by a supreme force. The Aurora leader asks Supreme Lee what just happened. Even though she feels like killing him, all she says is that she doesn't know what just happened either. Park watches everything in silence, but he's also on the verge of losing control. The announcer says that even Ryu's most powerful technique couldn't scratch the protagonist, and it's exactly that fact that's about to drive Ryu mad. Without thinking of the consequences, he charges at his opponent. Chashi Haiyan mocks the mage for losing his cool just because he realized the power gap. Ryu tries to land a kick, but completely misses. Overcome with rage, the mage unleashes a flurry of blows, all easily defended. No one watching the fight could have imagined seeing two mages brawling at such close range like this. Chashi Haiyan points out that his opponent is so nervous, he's messing up his footwork. He also notes that Ryu is placing his weight on the wrong leg and advises him to stop making such wide, exposed movements. To him, this isn't a fight, it's a circus performance. Even Ryu doesn't understand how he's doing all this. But Chashi Haiyan says he's been practicing martial arts for a while. Now he wants to know one thing. Our hero asks if that's really all Ryu's got to show. He says the kid has the ego of a dragon but the strength of an ant. But the mage swears he's going to turn the protagonist to ashes. At that moment, our hero puts some distance between them. The flames rise without stopping. Ryu swears he'll win even if he has to burn his own body to do it. This is the waltz of 10 fire dragons. The flames surge forward all at once. But the protagonist doesn't take it too seriously. Even so, he says the attack is going to be a pain to deal with. The dragons consume nearly the entire arena. A wave of heat reaches the stands. Lee just watches without interfering, but even she is surprised. Not even his final attack could get past Chashi Haiyan's barrier. The protagonist even says this is why he doesn't like messing with prideful people. He doesn't even enjoy being in this hot situation. That's when the dragons start getting tossed around, until the flames dissipate entirely. Chashi Haiyan warns that Ryu would be better off giving up this fight. Even the announcer can't believe someone could be this strong. She even tries guessing that the hero's mysterious power is gravity manipulation. The mage then falls to his knees. People are stunned that there's a power strong enough to control gravity. He would be equivalent to a god. Ryu is completely defenseless. There's nothing he can do when he takes a blow to the stomach. He's thrown far away. Chashi Hayeon says he's ready for the next opponent. Park asks who it is, and his vice replies that it's the knight Choi Ji-young. The guild leader orders him to use the secret weapon. That's the Twilight Lance, made to defend the guild's planes. Finally, the knight arrives, wielding the weapon known for destroying mages, Choi Ji-young. It's not hard to imagine he's never lost to any kind of magic, but there's still hope in the rookie. The protagonist just hopes all those titles aren't for nothing. Park knows Chashi Hayeon is confident, but he's sure this time things will be different. Let the battle begin. Choi activates his buff ability and charges. He attacks, but our hero dodges. Our hero jokes that his opponent is in too much of a hurry. Chashi Hayeon creates his energy orbs and hurls them at the knight. The area is filled with the blue smoke. Without a scratch, Choi charges forward again and quickly closes in on our hero. But Chashi Hayeon manages to put some distance between them. Besides being strong, Choi is fast and determined, so the protagonist decides to take the fight into the air. The knight quickly uses his lance to launch himself upward, but our hero uses his shield to defend. Somehow, his barrier cracks, and he's slammed back to the ground. Even Chashi Hayeon is impressed. It's been years since someone knocked him down in a fight. The knight returns to the battlefield. Our hero admits that if he could use his martial arts skills, this would all be easier. Even he has to acknowledge that his opponent is quite the fighter. But Chashi Hayeon is ready to show who's boss. The increase in gravity nearly brings the knight to his knees. Yet Park doesn't even seem concerned. In fact, he's amused. Choi steadies himself with his lance, and gradually he resists, until he's standing upright. Somehow, the knight is walking despite all the pressure. Choi taunts that gravity manipulation won't be enough to win this fight. Now he's the one who's going to crush our hero. But Chashi Hayeon finds it funny. He never said he was manipulating gravity. With a single motion, Choi is dragged across the entire arena. The knight crashes down, his armor shattered. Lee and the guild leader are left speechless. Even Park is at a loss for words. The commentators can't even explain what happened. They can't say it was gravity that caused that damage anymore. But the crowd is left wondering, what kind of power is this? Chashi Hayeon finds it impressive that the knight can still fight. He then explains that his ability is the inversion of yin and yang, and a plus rarity power that grants control over attraction and repulsion based on the user's mana. Attraction pulls and repulsion pushes. It's easy to understand. Then he tosses a rock at the knight's head. Choi says that our hero just made a mistake. The knight rises from the rubble and says the protagonist should never have gotten so close. Park connects with Lee and explains why Choi is known for always defeating mages. The reason is this ability. And if Chashi Hayeon has nothing but mage powers, Choi will win. His hand moves closer. Park is certain the battle is over. Lee becomes extremely worried about what's about to happen. A message appears for our hero. It says he's unable to use magic for the next 10 seconds. Even Chashi Hayeon doesn't know what to do. The vice leader orders Choi to use the counterspell. But the knight says he didn't want to use that technique in public. He explains that the leader believes Chashi Hayeon is hiding something and his supposed gravity power is far too dangerous. That's why the order is to end his life. The protagonist definitely wasn't expecting that, but he manages to dodge. Choi declares that this is his special ability, the counterspell. That's why mages can't beat him. The entire audience is speechless. Park says Chashi Hayeon is too sincere and doesn't like to flaunt his powers. Lee is in despair. The vice connects with the protagonist and begs him to run. It's not worth using martial arts. But Chashi Hayeon doesn't like hearing that one bit. The knight prepares to attack again. He warns that there's no use running. Choi dares our hero to withstand an attack powerful enough to bring down a building. The knight leaps at him. But the protagonist doesn't see himself losing. He wants to know what kind of nonsense people are feeding him. Chashi Hayeon releases his Kai. Both Lee and Park resonate with that energy. The Aurora leader is even worried about his vice, who seems to be feeling ill. Park is deeply impressed by the power of this celestial cultivation martial energy. It's a tremor unlike anything he's ever felt. The knight keeps going, but little by little, he's subdued by the energy, until he realizes something's wrong. He doesn't understand what's happening. His ability is still active. Before he knows it, he's bound by chains of energy. Chashi Hayeon explains that this isn't magic, it's martial arts, and if he's curious, he should ask Park. The protagonist says he nearly lost it when he heard someone tell him to run. What an absurd thing. He thinks it's cool that Choi is able to see what's going on. The technique is called Mental Sword, a level 40 power, but the sword itself is a manifestation of willpower. At the peak of this power, one could end a life with a thought or split the heavens and the earth. But it'd be boring if it ended so easily. The chains release the knight. Chashi Hayeon wants to teach everyone a lesson. He lands a powerful blow. With a single strike, Choi is destroyed. The knight is sent flying. Our hero hopes Park is watching this very closely so he won't forget. This is martial arts. Choi looks like a missile soaring through the air. All of his bones are shattered from the force of the kick. Park is completely speechless. The knight crashes outside the arena, already unconscious. Our hero is quite satisfied to have used his martial arts powers again after so long. And so victory goes to Chashi Hayeon. The protagonist ended up withdrawing from the other matches, claiming to be out of mana. But in the end, Aurora won the festival 3-2. Online, everyone is talking about the rookie, and it's likely he's as strong as Park himself, something that ultimately caused Twilight to drop in the rankings and Aurora to rise to first place. The assistant is worried about his leader. He calls for him, but gets no response. Park is alone in the room where everything is shattered by his rage. He's clearly in shock. Not only was he paralyzed with fear, he was humiliated. The power he saw, even for an instant, made it clear that Park cannot defeat him. So now the guild leader will resort to extreme measures. From now on, he won't hold back. He finally leaves the room and calls for his assistant. He has a place to go. They're going to meet the celestial god of war. A week has passed, and the Aurora marketing team is still receiving hundreds of calls about Chashi Haiyan, even though he's not part of the guild. But one call asks if Li Ji is in a relationship with a rookie, and that suggestion makes the young man extremely irritated. Inside the meeting room, you can hear the employees shouting in frustration. One of them reports that there have been 328 calls asking about Chashi Haiyan and 800 letters addressed to him. Most of it is from reporters and hunters wanting to join the protagonist's guild, but also sponsors and TV invitations. As instructed by the hero, all were rejected, except one. At the end of the report, someone yells from outside that they need the chief secretary's attention, and he doesn't look the least bit excited to deal with that problem. Lee asks the hero if he's enjoying being famous. The protagonist says he doesn't like all this noise. Chashi Haiyan says he should thank the chief secretary for all the work he's doing. Maybe it's a little late, but Lee wants to apologize. She tried everything to stop him from using martial arts, and as she admits, it was out of ego. The reason was also that she was worried about him. Chashi Haiyan says she underestimated him and thought you would really lose control. In truth, the protagonist doesn't care at all whether Park saw him use martial arts. He guesses the leader of Twilight must have felt the difference in power, and for that reason will leave them alone for a while. The amount he wants to go after them for what they did to his sister. For a moment, Lee shows a hint of satisfaction. Changing the subject a bit, she says that Twilight is now weakened. Park has disappeared, and even the previously neutral groups now want to join Aurora. Her guild is now the best in Korea, and it's thanks to the protagonist. This is an official thank you from the vice leader to the leader of the Limitless Guild. Chashi Haiyan is happy to see his friend finally acting like her normal self again. They shake hands, and he adds that he'll still be under her care for a while. Our hero checks the time and realizes it's late. His sister is probably already worried. Before he leaves, Lee asks why he accepted the invitation from the Jeju Island Guild Alliance since he turned down all the others. First, because he's tired of the dungeons in this region and his level isn't increasing much anymore. Besides, Jeju Island is perfect for a family trip. Chashi Haiyan says goodbye and tells her he'll be back in a month. But if our hero knew what was going to happen in the future, he never would have gone to that island. At the airport, Cha Nunsol looks excited. His sister is thrilled to have arrived on Jeju Island. She says it's her first time. Just by looking at him, it's clear the protagonist is happy to see his sister doing well. But while they're discussing what to do first, someone calls out to our hero. It's the Tamna Guild. The welcome committee leaves our heroes stunned. There's an awkward moment in the air, so they just decide to ignore the guy. But the man is quick and appears right in front of them, and he grabs the protagonist's hand immediately. The man introduces himself as the leader of Team Tamna, Kim Ki-eun, and Chai Unsol is shocked that someone younger than her already holds such a high position. On top of that, he admits he's a fan of the protagonist and would love to get an autograph or two later, and as he listens to this, the hero just wants to go back home. Kim also recognizes Chai Unsol as Aurora's representative and the sister of his idol. One of his assistants reminds the young leader of the time. Even if he didn't want to rush things, they're late, so details will be shared on the way. Our hero isn't thrilled about being dragged along, but Kim keeps doing it anyway. While promising a tour of the island later, a strange figure watches them. A Chinese man speaks over the radio, saying that Chashi Haiyan has arrived. Someone on the other end tells him to stop speaking Chinese or he'll give himself away. The man stands up, frustrated. He complains that his vacation is already over. Then he tells his men it's time to get to work, because he's set a trap for Chashi Haiyan, Jeju Island in Woljongre. A very cheerful man greets the protagonists. He's the other Tamna leader, Kim Haejun, who warmly welcomes them. He asked his nephew to bring what they prepared as a gift. Cha Eun-sol expects it to be one of the island's delicacies. Kim promises that once you taste this, you'll never forget it. This is the high-quality item they carefully chose, a delicious, fresh tangerine. The disappointment is cosmic. Cha Eun-sol even considers ending their lives right there, but her brother holds her back. The Tamna leaders apologize for getting straight to the point with the heroes who just arrived, but the situation is urgent. Kim Ki-eun begins explaining that they opposed the two-guild hunter system and created their own independent group. Their hope was to stay out of the war between the two main factions. But that changed when level 11 danger dungeons started appearing on the island, and only hunters above level 40 can clear them. Tamna has no one at that level since all high-level hunters are in the two major guilds. What our hero doesn't understand is why they don't just ignore the dungeons, since monsters will come out of them anyway. But Kim Ki-eun says that if they do that, they'll lose their rights over the dungeons and their group will be crushed by the two major guilds. He explains that they fought hard to keep other groups off their island, but if things continue like this, they'll lose their territory. But just when they were most desperate, a light appeared. That was when they saw Chashi Haiyan on TV. A high-level and independent hunter appeared when they least expected it, like a ray of hope. Hearing all this, the protagonist can only think that these people are completely nuts. The two Kims thank him from the bottom of their hearts, but our hero says he only came because it was a chance to level up. He already wants to go straight to the dungeon, but his sister asks him to wait. To her, there's something very important to deal with. He has no idea what she's talking about, but it's because she really wants to eat black pork and trout. Later, inside one of the dungeons, a huge explosion erupts. Members of the Twilight Guild are locked in battle. One of the warriors is extremely frustrated that none of his attacks are landing. This is the Fire Venom Monkey dungeon. The creature prepares to attack, breathing flames straight from its mouth. But one of the shield bearers jumps in front. The warrior tells him to hang in there. But the protection breaks down due to the venom. It's so corrosive that it melts stone. The hunter didn't expect them to be this strong. Even with a solid defense, their attacks manage to break through. The longer the fight goes, the worse it gets. If it continues like this, both of them will perish. A powerful bolt shoots from the treetops, pulverizing all the monkeys. Shashi Hyen even mocks how lame the name of these creatures sounds. Ironic, right? The warrior thanks the hero as he descends. Right behind him is Kim, also thanking the protagonist, while his sister carries him like a sack of potatoes. He knows Shai Unsol is mad at him, so the young leader decides to thank her too. Now that he's rested, the boy decides it's time to contribute. Kim orders both hunters to get ready, and they clearly understand his order. Both leap into battle. The guild leader praises the protagonist for also using mage techniques, but this last scene leaves Shashi Hyen curious about the boy's level. Kim replies that he's just a little above level 40, already way above Cha Unsol, who's older than him. The other two are close to reaching level 40 as well, thanks to their constant training. Because they're responsible for all the dungeons on Jigu, they've been leveling up quickly. Our hero says he liked the ability he just saw, and Kim explains it's a teleportation power. It was very hard to master. But Shashi Hyen says it didn't seem all that difficult to learn. Kim is blown away when he realizes his idol managed to understand his ability just by watching. Meanwhile, the protagonist thinks he made the right choice investing in intuition. Thanks to martial arts, he didn't need to spend XP on other attributes, so he put 53 points into intuition. That's why he could so easily read the magical mechanics of the ability just now. And not wanting to disappoint anyone, he wants to show what he just learned in action. Shashi Hyen tells him to pay attention, but not to be too impressed. Only, nothing happens. A little late, he realizes Kim wasn't actually using teleportation at that moment. With no choice, he asks the boy how he does it. Somewhere in the forest, the monkeys are calmly doing their monkey business. Suddenly, Kim appears to bother them. First, he says hello. The animals are confused. Then he says goodbye as the monkeys are teleported into the sky. The creatures don't stand a chance. Shashi Hyen thinks the technique is pretty cool. Kim explains that alone he can wipe out large groups simply by making them fall from great heights. His range limit is 150 meters, but that's more than enough to finish off most monsters. In addition, he can teleport anything within sight as long as the space is empty and move any object within his reach. Kim says he only showed it because the protagonist asked, but before he can finish his sentence, Shashi Hyen disappears right in front of him. Our hero explains that after the explanation and watching the boy use it, he was able to learn the technique, but he still needs a bit of practice. Now the group takes a break to eat. Shai Unsol scolds everyone for letting their guard down in such a dangerous area. Kim agrees she's right, but says that thanks to everyone's efforts, they've earned a snack break. Stubborn as always, the girl refuses. The young leader then offers the food to the protagonist and comments that he's already mastering teleportation. While eating, Shashi Hyen explains that for someone like him, already a master, learning new techniques is very simple. Seeing the scene, Shai Unsol just wants to punch her brother in the face. She tells Kim that it's impossible to learn anything from her brother since he has a completely different way of getting stronger. But the boy reminds her that he's the team leader, and that puts him in a position where he can afford to get comfortable, and lately, he's been feeling like he's reached his limit. Kim quickly apologizes for getting carried away and talking too much. It's just that, even though his team trusts him, he feels incredibly incompetent. He admits he's afraid of becoming complacent someday. He apologizes again, but Shai Unsol snatches the food from his hand. She tells him to stop talking and eat because Jigu's kimbap is really tasty. Of course, Kim is touched. While the two of them are getting way too excited, Shashi Hyen asks how long they still need to keep hunting. Besides the monkeys being numerous, they're very fast, and there's a limit to how many Kim can teleport. That's why the leader wanted to just to grow them. Shai Unsol points out that it's possible all the monsters might pile onto a single person. Our hero says he might have a solution. It's a skill called Sovereignty, a B-rank power that can subdue or inspire awe in a group using sheer willpower and presence. Shashi Hyen explains he got this skill from the bird dungeon, but being able to subjugate monsters with his will never felt like a big deal to him. However, this power also affects the creature's mind and will. The protagonist managed to fuse it with Mind's sword, allowing him to issue basic commands to creatures. He had actually forgotten about this power since controlling monsters was never that interesting to him. But if he can combine these two skills well, this time they'll come in handy. Shashi Hyen activates telepathic domination. Hands of control sweep through the forest in search of targets. They move until they reach the monkeys. His command appears before him. With that, he awakens. Kim and his sister look deeply concerned. But our hero only asks if the young leader has enough mana left for a few more teleports, and he says yes. The protagonist is pleased to hear that, because he believes he just stirred up serious trouble. Feeling the tremors, the other hunters think it's an earthquake. But that's impossible in a dungeon, so there's only one explanation. Monsters are coming, fast. One of the monkeys drops in front of them. The shield bearer feels relieved. For a second, he thought it was a horde. But looking up at the trees, he sees dozens of glowing eyes staring back. The group is terrified by how surrounded they are. Chashi Haiyan orders Kim to get the entire team out. He'll take it from here. Seeing the gesture the protagonist makes and remembering its meaning, Kim agrees. But his sister completely disagrees with leaving her brother to handle this army alone. The monkeys are just waiting for the right moment to strike. Kim calls out to Chat Unsul, urging her to stay close. With no other choice, he uses his ability. Against her will, she's teleported. In the end, everyone leaves, and only our hero remains. Now he's free and unrestrained. Chashi Haiyan promises to go all out. A massive explosion of energy grows larger and more devastating by the second. From afar, Kim watches in awe at this display of power. The entire group is speechless. They can't even believe a human is doing this. It confirms the rumors that the hero must be above level 60. The leader asks the girl if it was the protagonist who attracted the monsters, but she's too upset to answer. Kim understands that no matter how strong Chashi Haiyan is, he's all the family she has. So he tries to comfort her. The young leader says that her brother is very strong and that nothing bad will happen to him. All Kim asks is for her to trust her brother. Chat Unsul is left speechless, because he's completely wrong. She's not worried. She's furious that Chashi Haiyan is having all the experience for himself, even after he promised they'd share. Kim thought she was worried, but Che says that doesn't even make sense. At this moment, Chashi Haiyan must be the happiest man in the world. The protagonist wasn't expecting his command reach to have gone that far. By properly combining both skills, our hero could make all the dungeon monsters come to him, and that will make his life much easier. It looks like it worked again. Chashi Haiyan is just waiting for them to arrive. Only the energy explosions can be seen. Suddenly, Lee feels that something is wrong. The secretary gets worried and asks if she's okay. She says she felt an evil laugh. Stating that everything is fine, he goes back to work. His report states that Park, the leader of Twilight, still hasn't been seen outside his house, and the guild's hunters are also being very quiet. The good news is that Aurora easily managed to tame the dungeons that were in dispute with them. It seems they won't need to worry about Twilight for a while. But Lee is very worried that Park is staying so quiet after being humiliated on national television. What she fears is that he's plotting something. But to the secretary, they have something else to worry about now. And apparently, Lee is quite shocked. The news is about the high-risk dungeon discovered in the Taebaek Mountain. The danger is level 13, and hunters must be at least level 60, and the environment is a desert. Without a doubt, it's the hardest dungeon that exists. This dungeon is a vast, scorching desert. The hunters didn't even see the huge creature coming after them. Only insect monsters the size of buildings walking through the sands, heading toward the city. Even though there aren't many of them, each one is strong enough to require a high-level hunter to handle, and that was confirmed by the guild leader himself. Lee comments that apparently the leader, the director, and she will need to form a team just to deal with this. Of course, she can't stop thinking about it. At times like this, she wishes he were here. But apparently Lee was zoning out because the secretary keeps calling her attention. He gets worried again about his vice and says if she's not okay, it's better to go home. Accidentally, she ends up bumping into her tea, which falls and breaks the cup. Her secretary offers to clean up the mess. Meanwhile, she wonders if she's going crazy. More than that, she wonders when Chashi Haiyan will return. It's been 15 days since they entered the Jigu dungeon. The warrior is caught by surprise by an attack coming from within the smoke. The creature is going to attack him. But a single attack resolves the situation quickly. The protagonist is using his skill to lure the monsters, and they take turns dealing with them. Chai Dumsul argues with Kim because she thinks he's treating her like a child. The Hunter evolution system distributes XP according to the damage a person deals to the creature. The best thing would be for our hero not to enter combat again. But it's hard when you see the group's tank running. At times like that, he's forced to act. Chashi Haiyan teleports behind the boy and pulls him out of danger. The squire tearfully thanks him for saving his life, and seeing that, our hero wonders if it's possible to level up courage. Kim takes the opportunity to ignore the scolding he's getting. Besides that, Chashi Haiyan learned to teleport, and even though everyone's impressed by it, that wasn't the skill tree he wanted to go down. Chat Yunsul says she finally understood. Jigu's famous products aren't the trout of the tangerines. She says this island has great dungeons to level up, even though she only gained 3 levels and reached 38. Kim also agrees that they're leveling up a lot. Chashi Haiyan was worried that his sister would find it boring to just train, but apparently the dungeons can also count as tourist attractions. The boy says the next mission is a request from the Samdado Guild. There, the monsters are bats with wolf heads, and upon hearing this, our hero seems uncomfortable. He then asks what kind of terrain this dungeon has. Kim confirms it's a cave. No one notices, but the protagonist gets uneasy. The young leader says the group requesting this mission only wants Chashi Haiyan to take part in it. Apparently the reason is that the place is so dark that arrows and teleport would be useless. Upon hearing that, Chat Unsul feels underestimated and gets irritated. Our hero finds it a bit suspicious, but he agrees because both are clearly very tired. He promises he'll handle this mission really quickly, but just thinking about a cave brings back things he didn't want to remember. A man named Dronzer introduces himself to the protagonist and says he's the leader of the Twilight Guild and the dungeon guide. He assumes Treachery already knows all the details, so he takes him straight to the cave. In the middle of the forest, the green portal can be seen, and the protagonist stands in front of it. Just thinking that it's a cave makes the protagonist far more uncomfortable than he expected to be. But no matter what's inside, he has to finish this. The Batwolves are being electrocuted. One of the men accompanying the mission asks what they should do since the protagonist is advancing so fast. Treachery says he's already done in that area, and Dronzer says the hero is more amazing than he imagined. He says they need to keep following the trail until they reach the unexplored area. Since that's the case, the protagonist wants to pick up the pace. The man even asks if Treachery is okay, but he just ignores him. But there really is a problem. Even after all this time, his terrifying memories are still alive as ever. Dronzer tries to tell the hero that if he's feeling unwell, there's no reason they can't stop for a while. But the man immediately regrets saying that. Once again, Treachery says he's fine and this time he won't repeat himself. Dronzer quickly backs off and offers him a juice pouch. But all our hero can think is that he needs to leave as quickly as possible before he ends up destroying everyone there. The man shows that the path from here on is a bit tricky, but he's already mapped out this area. But their behavior makes them even more suspicious. Or maybe Treachery is just very nervous. Dronzer says the Siakarim grottos are a much prettier place than these damp caves. He offers to take our hero there one day, but of course he declines. Chit just wants to know how much longer until they reach the objective. But at that very moment, his instincts kick in. A magic circle is glowing on the ceiling. The protagonist recognizes this magic as an illusory maze trap. It's not something fatal, at least, but once someone is caught, they completely lose their sense of direction. And that seemed to be happening to the others around him. But looking closely, the energy flow appears to be guiding the group to a specific place. For some reason, this is a Murim trap, but who could have said it? Whatever it is, Treachery doesn't want to go through anything related to the other world while in a cave. The protagonist takes a deep breath to calm himself, and then decides he'll fall into the trap to see what happens. Our hero decides to find out who's behind all this. Meanwhile, in the desert dungeons, the sand monsters keep causing havoc. A man calls for everyone's attention. This group leader uses a buff spell. The monster then returns into the sand. One of the hunters believes the creature must be retreating, but he sees the truth. Another monster appears about to launch a devastating attack. Their leader tells everyone to prepare. He wants to take advantage of the opportunity, so they can't retreat. The group leader manages to hold the giant worm for a moment. At that moment, he gives the signal. That's when the vice leader takes the chance. With her two blades, she finishes off the monster. Lee, with the help of the others, wins the fight. The guild leader is so happy that he says if the two of them are together, they'll finish this dungeon easily. But she says that's just the two of them, because so far they've taken down 3 monsters and it's already exhausted the guild. But the leader comments that she probably wishes she was spending time with Treachery since people say they're dating. But he must have regretted saying that immediately, because she quickly jabs at him to stop joking around. Changing the subject, Lee wants to know why the others didn't come. It would have made things easier. But the leader says both of them had an appointment they couldn't miss. 2 men are watching near the Jigu dungeon portal. Both said they had something very important to take care of. The guards are chatting about how they saw Treachery fighting at the solar festival. But the secretary already appears, scolding them for not taking their job seriously. They say they have nothing to do, so they're just having a snack. But the secretary says that even if Twilight hasn't been active lately, that's no reason to let their guard down. After all, you never know when a fight might start. At that moment, bursts of energy come from inside the woods. When a sphere crashes, it explodes. The secretary knows this attack was a fired arrow. The problem is that no one should know about this dungeon. A shadow of someone approaches. There's doubt whether it's Twilight, but the figure is Director Yoon's summon from Aurora. He says this was a secret attack from the other guild. The secretary becomes very worried about this possibility. He even considers entering the dungeon to warn the vice leader and the guild leader. But then he realizes something is wrong. There was no way the director could know where they were since he said he was going to do something else. Unfortunately, it's too late. Yoon says he's almost finished with his mission. The traitor, after finishing, picks up his phone. In the call, he says the other director, Kwan, is also joining the attack, and he's happy that Twilight has already taken care of all the details. The one thanking him is Park on the other end of the call. When he arrives at the scene, the other hunters bow to him. Park is also very pleased to see the damage they've done. He praises the 2 directors who are bowing. The leader thinks Lee was very naive. She never imagined there could be traitors in her guild. More than that, they were already bought off since the solar festival. Park steps over the bodies as if they're nothing. The leader remembers it's been 7 years since they were in a dungeon together, and back then he was just getting started. His memory goes back to a time when a group was calling for Lee. She looked really happy in those days. Park then calls her attention. According to him, that group is just holding the 2 of them back. To him, Lee has forgotten her Murim life, even though their goal should be to get stronger as fast as possible. He talks about a jade of the celestial god of war. According to him, martial arts improve greatly just by using it. In Park's view, serving that god would make both of them much stronger. but she cuts him off. Lee says Earth isn't Murim, and here no one is constantly hunting them, so there's no need to keep getting stronger at all costs. She's happy just being with her friends, so they should forget what they went through in the other world. The group calls for Lee again, and she leaves Park behind. But he thought she'd be the one person who would understand him, since they both went through the same pain. To him, he always felt like a supporting character, all because of these weak people. Later, in a fight, Park slices a monster in half. The creature is so weak to him. That's when he hears Lee scream. A member of the group was injured by one of those very weak monsters. Another member asks Park to get the hurt girl out of the dungeon as fast as possible. The boy keeps talking, but the whole time it seems like he's being ignored. Not understanding why his teammate won't move, he keeps begging for help. But Park's mind is elsewhere, thinking that no matter what he does, she never acknowledges his sacrifice. And she's still weak. She's forgotten the despair of Murim. In his view, the reason for all of this is those insects. Park decides to destroy everything that makes Lee Ji weak. That's the only way he believes she'll understand herself. So he decides to free her, starting with all of Lee's weak friends. Park stands in front of the portal. It's as if his mind isn't even there. The traders wonder why he's like that. At that moment, the vice leader shows up and tells them to guard the entrance. And if they see any member of Aurora, they must be eliminated. Park says he can feel Chashi Hyen. You can tell things are going well on the island. But the vice says Gao Lin has already begun to act, and no one escapes their traps. The vice says he's even received a report already, but Park doesn't want to hear it. He only wants to know one thing. When they're in the dungeon, he wants to finish off Li Jiwei. For a second, the leader seems shaken, but he quickly regains his posture and says yes, since that was the contract. After all, he doesn't believe he can defeat her. Park then says it's time to begin. They are top-class hunters, but this time, the prey is Aurora. Chashi Hyen finds the place extremely confusing. He followed the trap, but it didn't lead anywhere. Even the two men are whispering to each other, saying this wasn't what they expected either. But the protagonist hears them talking. Chashi Hyen demands they say what they're hiding, but of course the man says it's nothing. Out of patience, the protagonist grabs his face. Our hero says he won't turn a blind eye anymore. So if he wants to walk out of this cave, he better talk. One of the companions seems to have noticed something strange. Even the protagonist is speechless. A mysterious voice comments that he almost missed his cue given how fast our hero arrived. Even one of the assistants says everything is ready. That voice says it's a pleasure to meet the protagonist. On a wall is a bomb. That's where the voice is coming from. Chashi Hyen admits he's at a loss for words. Then comes the explosion. Elsewhere, Lee gets a very bad feeling, but she decides to ignore it. She needs to focus on the mission. Just within her field of vision, she sees at least 4 monsters to deal with. That's when she hears something wrong. An explosion occurred right where her group was resting. The leader of Aurora is in the middle of combat, but the mage dodges the attack. Then the rough fighter seizes the chance and attacks the leader while he can't defend. But the leader still uses all his strength to counterattack. However, the rough fighter dodges the strike. He's in the worst situation possible. Fighting the Jang is already tough, and now with both of them, it's even worse. And Park is still watching everything. The leader of Aurora has no idea how to deal with him. Park claps for the performance he just witnessed. He apologizes for always underestimating John. The leader of Aurora says he never imagined this would be how he'd meet his rival. John asks how they got there and what happened to the other hunters who were guarding the portal. Park even laughs at the question. After all, the answer is obvious. John says all the information about this dungeon was secret, so it's obvious there are traitors in the guild. Whoever it is, John promises to slice them apart. The mage says his prey has a lot of willpower. Before he realizes it, something horrible happens. One of his group members is fatally wounded. He looks at his leader and begs for help. John can only hear the boy pleading for his life. The knight approaches, ready to end the fight. Unfortunately, the leader can only scream in frustration for his companion. Park still mocks him, saying that scene is really sad, heartbreaking. Then he comments that all those insects are just burdens. Lee is the one who shows up to crush the insect, but Jang dodges the blow. Lee says the kid came to see her again. Park believes his old friend isn't happy to see him, but he missed her. To Lee, though, he's just talking nonsense again. She promises that he'll never say another word in his life. Park then asks his vice to take care of her. All that's visible is the shine of blades clashing. The two exchange extremely fast strikes. They both hit each other, pushing one another back, but Lee ends up with a light cut on her face. Still, she doesn't waste time in counterattacks, pushing him away. Rage overtakes the boy. In his anger, he manages to stop being dragged. But before he can do anything, she's already on top of him, saying he was just a brat who didn't even know how to hold a knife. He switches hands with the blades, but the slash misses entirely and she still calls him reckless. But Lee knows he's extremely aggressive, so she has to be careful. Meanwhile, she never takes her eyes off her group. The leader is surrounded, but still fighting bravely. Lee believes he can hold out for a while, but she knows that's not the real problem. She looks directly at the great boss, who is even waving at her, but she knows he's plotting something. Park comments that his friend got much stronger than he expected. He also believes things on Lee Island must be wrapping up. The leader of Twilight is hoping Chashi Hyen has already become fertilizer. A light shines from beneath the rocks. Then, an explosion goes off. The protagonist gets up, and he's burning with the desire to pay them back. The others who were with our hero seem to have survived too, but even they don't know what just happened. That's when he sees Shashi Hyan, but he doesn't look happy at all. Not only is he in a cave, but he had to use his IQ, all because of a bomb. The man, trying to smooth things over, asks if our hero is hurt. He even pretends he doesn't know what's going on, but he really shouldn't have done that. Suddenly, the man starts floating, but he's dropped right away because the protagonist wants to settle this quickly. He wants to know what's going on. It's already more than obvious that this was a trap set up long in advance, so they better stop thinking Shashi Hyan looks like a fool. Little by little, fear starts taking over the man, until he starts crying, saying he doesn't know what's happening. Because even they got caught in the explosion. Out of patience, our hero decides to use his control ability. This will be the first time he uses this power on humans. But if the mind gets destroyed, it won't be his fault. A shadow begins to cover the man's head. It's revealed that they were always financially supported by Twilight, and their mission was to make sure the island was under their control. One day, a man came to him. He was an arrogant person. The same man introduced himself as Park's younger brother. All he knew was that this man was a Chinese hunter, but it was clear this guy was the real deal. They were simply following Gao's orders. All they had to do was bring Shashi Hyan to the designated location. Our hero knows signals don't work from outside the dungeon, meaning this guy is in the cave too. The protagonist can't sense anything? Maybe it already left. This has become a major headache for our hero, so he asks one of the guys to step aside. Because he's in the line of fire, again, he tells the kid to move. An energy blast shoots from his hand and hits the pile of rocks, causing an explosion. A tunnel opens in the wall. At least now they're happy they can go home and take a shower. But Shashi Hyan doesn't agree with that. He doesn't like leaving loose ends. The protagonist makes the cave glow with his energy. The stones close off the entrance again. They beg for mercy. Shashi Hyan leaves them behind without mercy. Every man for himself. Now that he knows Twilight is behind this, he can attack openly. In the desert, Lee finds herself in a tight spot. Her opponent is using shadow clone technique to give her a hard time. Jang says the girl should wipe the blood from her mouth and unleashes the shadow dance technique. First, he tries to distract her. He clearly knows what he's doing. But Lee says he's just talking nonsense. She never planned to use that ability. It would be a waste on someone as weak as him. After all, he's not worth it to her. Fueled by rage again, he jumps into the fight. Lee says she's going to show him something. She'll show how a real rough fighter battles. The desert even seems calm. Some red blurs pass by. Lee is being chased by her opponent, but she's very fast. She leaps over the shadow clones. Jang doesn't take his eyes off her. His clones attack, blasting a rock near her. Lee's movement is disrupted, and now he's surrounding her. The girl even jokes that he must be one of Park's lackeys, because he's just as annoying. A light shines in the darkness. Jang didn't even see her passing, cutting through everyone. But she notices a movement. Lee turns in time to see him approaching. He prepares his special technique, landing a poisonous strike. Even Lee didn't expect that. She then creates some distance. The poisonous attack with just one touch corrodes Lee's blade. The girl lands back on the ground. She knows now, if she slips up, she could lose this fight. Lee drops her weapons. The vice leader says her opponent changed his style because he used to insist on fighting with two knives like hers. Jang says that's thanks to her. She was the one who told him the method to become the best assassin. Lee is worried because she needs to figure out which one is the real body, but not wanting to show it, she says she doesn't remember telling him anything. Jang seems to take it to heart, but he promises he'll help refresh her memory by forcing her to use the shadow dance. Lee insists he's getting really annoying with this talk. Even though she keeps saying he's too weak for that technique, in truth, she's saving her energy for Park. But of course, Jang is offended. Then, one of his clones attacks, striking her from behind. Lee remembers how she used to underestimate this kid, a crybaby raised by Park who fought exactly like her. Jang was terrified that day. He was the only one who survived an encounter against her. Lee says his existence seems tailor-made to irritate her. As she approaches, she puts her blade to his throat and tells him the secret to an assassin's strength, hating someone from the bottom of your heart. But just at that moment, reinforcements arrive. Lee decides to leave simply because she's tired. But before she goes, she gives one last piece of advice. Jang isn't cut out for this life. She thinks he should quit. Then she says goodbye, but not before calling him a cheap knockoff. Jang says that after that humiliation, he threw away all of her techniques and started from scratch, all to surpass her. He says he used to admire Lee, but that changed after that day. But she was right. His obsession made him the best in the world. Then the world around him begins to shift. Jang looks shocked by what he sees. Lee reappears, saying that in the end he obeys her. But it would have been better if he had quit like she advised. Jang didn't expect that she had used his shadow clone. Lee decides to give one final piece of advice. You only show your claws once when it's time to eliminate your enemies. His last words are shouted, calling out Lee Jihai's name. That is his end. Up until that moment, he was just a cheap copy. A fool until the end. When the fight ends, a voice congratulates her. The voice says her vice at least fought well. Lee's glad he finally showed his face. The wretch she most wants to kill. Park asks what she thought of the event he prepared for her. Lee tells him he's not going to meet a peaceful end because of it, but he seems pleased. Park draws his sword and says that's exactly what he wanted to hear. A vortex of energy swirls around both of them. Lee then invokes the shadow dance. A phone tries to make a call to Lee, but it goes straight to voicemail. Unfortunately, the protagonist won't be able to warn her about what happened. That's when a voice says he won't be able to reach Lee. Our hero is surrounded by several hunters. The same voice explains that the device is inside a dungeon and external signals can't reach those inside. With a smile, the one behind all the chaos asks if he's enjoying the cave, since it resembles the ones in Murim, and he asks if Cha agrees. Shashi Hyun asks how he knows Lee is in a dungeon. He replies that if they ask nicely, he'll reveal the secret. The hunter taunts our hero, and that's enough to convince Cha that he's not here to help. But it doesn't matter, because he can force anyone to talk. Sensing Shashi Hyun's energy, the man gets very excited. You can feel the martial resonance in the air, but he has a move of his own. A giant symbol forms on the ground. Our hero recognizes it as a trap formation, but he says this one is different from Murim's. It's merged with sorcerer abilities. It's the activation of the celestial golden seal formation. The hunters surrounding him charge in. Shashi Hyun doesn't care about the magical trick, but something feels different. Something seems wrong with our hero. The first enemy approaches to strike. Meanwhile, Shashi Hyun feels his body growing heavier. Our hero throws a punch, but the hunter blocks it with his blade. Something is definitely wrong. He can't access his eternal energy. Two more assassins seize the chance. Cha defends himself with his shield, but his barrier cracks from just that blow. The protagonist senses something familiar from these people. Apparently, they all came back from Murim. Godlin laughs at the shock on our hero's face. The seal suppresses and extracts the target's energy, transferring it to his subordinates, no matter how strong a person is. Since in truth that power is being used to make Gao's men stronger, that accumulated strength will become their weakness. The protagonist is annoyed by how much this guy talks. Chat tells him to come at him already. Our hero is going to make sure they never forget the name of the Sword Emperor. A trap formation is a type of dimensional space made to house things like natural elements or mystical items such as spells. Legendary strategists once used this technique to summon winds and lightning to annihilate his enemies. Gao considered that man a true god, which is why back in Murim he only trained in trap formations. So now, when using this technique, he sees himself as invincible, a true god. At least that was the idea. But the sword slash goes right through our hero. When you look again, he's already somewhere else. Cha has already figured out that the base of the seal draws from metal energy. Two other hunters leap into attack, but they also pass straight through. Our hero tells them to hold on. It's almost over. Gao notices that his target used a pressure point technique paralyzing his men, but that shouldn't be possible inside the circle. The protagonist then says he wants to clear up a doubt. He asks if the group is part of the demonic cult, but apparently they don't know anything. That's because they didn't come from Murim. First, because they're not good swordsmen. Second, because there's no celestial cultivation energy flowing between them. Gao finds our hero very annoying, but he admits it. His subordinates were never in the other world. They were molded to be martial artists. The protagonist says that at his level, he could pull something like that off, but not Gao, which means it's likely some kind of sorcery. Only magic could make it work. Cha doesn't care if it's cult magic or martial arts. In the end, none of it will work against him. Gao reveals that he took advantage of beggars wandering the streets. He got great results doing that, which is how he got good subordinates. Sounds like Gao used human sacrifices to create the circle. Chad is satisfied to hear that, because that's exactly the kind of thing he expects from the demonic cult. The resonance ravels Gao. That's because when the protagonist deals with people like him, he never gets tired of beating them down. But enough talk. Our hero is ready to begin the hunt. Gao is shaken. He swears he'll finish Cha. His men start moving again. Now they're also carrying energy. Our hero says they're feeling pretty bold just because they're using his own internal power. Then he steps, and everything changes. The circle rapidly turns blue. Gao has no idea what's going on. His men scream in agony, as if they're on fire. They beg for help. Cha just watches. Fire melts metal, our hero explains. Since the trap was based on the metal element, he modified it. Gao has no idea how he knows that, but the protagonist says he studied a bit of this stuff as a hobby when he was in Murim. He can't believe what he just heard. After all, Gao dedicated his life to this art. But for our hero, it was just a pastime. Apparently, Gao was in shock at seeing his own limits. Smart people are often great at studying after all, but this is the end. That trap is now draining Gao's vital key, and since he used human lives for his own goals, it's only fair. But before finishing, the protagonist wants to get some information. He wants to know what happened to Li Jie. In his mind, Jie sees his friend lifeless. Park always thought of himself as a lonely person, until he met her. When he was in danger, she refused to abandon him. Even when he was afraid, haunted by memories of Murim, she was there. He felt seen and loved. Li Jie was there, but they never should have met. Park tells her to get up. It'd be disappointing if she lost like this. With the last bit of strength she has, she rises, but her eyes show that her fighting spirit hasn't died. She rises to strike again. Park activates his shield technique. The two collide, and their reflection power is triggered. Lee is pushed back, but she manages to land on her feet. Park notices she's exhausted. Even the shadow dance has deactivated. Lee doesn't remember Park ever being this strong. That's because she's been giving it everything she's got. The vice leader says she'll ask one final question. He then agrees to answer without any problem. Lee just wants to know one thing. She asks why he did what he did to her friends. Park is tired of this boring topic. She begins to tremble with rage. Lee wants the truth because he always dodges this question. Park thinks for a moment, then he answers that they were weak as always. Crushing the weak is his instinct. Lee thinks she's crazy for believing she could ever have a normal conversation. Even with tears in her eyes, she's ready to end this once and for all. She strikes like lightning at full speed. In less than an instant, they're face to face. Both blades clash. The shockwave from the impact is monstrous. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Chaz worried, checking his phone. It seems he received a delivery. What shows up is that Park follows the celestial god of war. Unfortunately, the subject's mind didn't last very long, and the location he tracked is about 450 meters away. She remembers his teleportation skill. Looks like he has an idea of what to do. Our hero could get there in 20 minutes using his ability, but he doesn't understand why he's even worried. Lee's just a business partner, nothing more. In Murim, this kind of thing happens all the time. But then the protagonist, Cha, remembers Lee inviting him on a date. He recalls all the moments they had together. They're all good memories, just the two of them. That makes him start laughing to himself. He questions his own sanity. The protagonist was sure he only cared about himself and his sister. He hadn't even realized that now there was someone else in his life. Cha heads toward her, hoping she holds on until he gets there.